up there, or in my case, down in front of me. The mayor is on holidays, so he's not here. The other two councillors, I'm apparently not allowed to tell you where they are, but I can tell you it's down south and it's sunny, which raises the question as to why Elaine and I stayed up here and shoveled snow last week, but that's another question. The emergency exits, for those of you who are here in person, is straight behind you. These recordings are being video recorded and broadcast. Councillors may disclose a pecuniary interest now or any time during the meeting. Councillor Capes, would you do the land acknowledgement, please?
Yes. We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the town of Mono resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Teonatate, Attawandaron, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe peoples. We also acknowledge that the town of Mono resides within the treaty lands named under Treaty 18, the Nottawasaga Purchase of 1818. These traditional territories upon which we live and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. It is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and resources.
Thank you. I now have a motion that the council approves the agenda of session 7-2024 as circulated. Are there any? Yes, Councillor Mankalo. Can't hear you, Ralph.
Well, I'm approving.
Oh, you're moving it. Thank you, Ralph. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Capes. Any objections? That motion passes. We now have a motion to approve the previous minutes. Do I have a mover? Capes? Davy. I personally have one question about it, and the clerk has already explained this to me, but I would like it explained publicly. The minutes of the last meeting say that Deputy Mayor Nix had a conflict of interest for a certain subject and left the room. That is strictly speaking true, but I would like to point out there is a distinction, as the Integrity Commissioner has told me. I had an indirect conflict of interest, which means I was a member of the Bruce Trail, and so I have an indirect conflict of interest. The clerk will explain why he uses conflict of interest in the minutes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nick. So the distinction is the Act states that members must declare that they have a conflict, which is what is recorded in the minutes. The Act doesn't state that we go into detail in the minutes on the type of conflict. So direct and indirect is a type of conflict. The minutes note that a conflict was declared, and of course the full details are posted onto the website for anyone who needs further information. So the minutes just note that the conflict was declared.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. I just wanted to make sure the public understood that I didn't have a direct financial connection with that, with the discussion. Any objections to the motion that's on the floor? Hearing none, that passes. I now have two proclamations to read. National Volunteer Week. This is a lengthy one, so bear with me. Whereas 24 million Canadians give their time through formal or informal types of volunteering, and locally 2,723 individuals and 179 member organizations are registered with volunteerdufferin.ca, and whereas volunteers in Mono mentor our children, support those feeling isolated, beautify our green spaces, and fundraise for our charitable organizations, and whereas the theme for the celebration of National Volunteer Week 2024 is, quote, every moment matters, volunteers in Mono share their time, skills, empathy, and creativity with each and every contribution they make at a moment when we need support more than ever before. And whereas volunteers are vital to making a collective impact on the strength, inclusivity, quality of life, and well-being of our communities, and whereas Mono's volunteers are individuals, families, workers, retirees, community members of all ages and backgrounds, and whereas the collective result of the work done by our town's volunteers is that Mono is a more desirable place to live, and whereas volunteers serve on boards, help host community festivals, stock shelves at food banks, deliver meals to seniors, help in schools, plant community gardens, and whereas organizations in Mono that rely on volunteers are the fundamental backbone of what helps to make our community thrive, Now therefore, I, Deputy Mayor Fred Nix, on behalf of council, do hereby proclaim April 14th to the 20th, 2024 as National Volunteer Week in the town of Mono, and urge my fellow citizens to recognize the crucial role played by volunteers in our community. I will sign and date that later. I think you put it in another folder. I have another proclamation. Sikh Heritage Month. Whereas the Sikh Heritage Month Act 2013 proclaimed the month of April each year as the Sikh Heritage Month in Ontario, and whereas the month of April was chosen as it is an important month to the Sikh community, and whereas by proclaiming Sikh Heritage Month, the province of Ontario recognizes the important contributions that Sikh Canadians have made to Ontario's social, economic, political, and cultural fabric, and whereas Sikh Heritage Month is an opportunity to remember, celebrate, and educate future generations about Sikh Canadians and the important role they have played and continue to play in Mono and in the communities across Ontario. Now therefore, I, Deputy Mayor Fred Nix, on behalf of council, do hereby proclaim April 24th, April 2024, as Sikh Heritage Month in the town of Mono, and invite residents to join council at 10 a.m. on Monday, April 15th, to raise the Sikh flag at Town Hall. Dated in council this 9th day of April 2024, Town of Mono. I should also point out that in addition to raising the flag here at 10 a.m. on the 15th, at 2 o'clock there will be a flag raising in the town of Orangeville in front of the county building on, what's your name, street?
Middlebrook Center?
No, not Idlebrook, the
On Zina?
Zina Street, yes. All right, those are the proclamations. Now, we have public question period. Could I just ask if there are members of the public who have questions, that if the questions have to do with a noise exemption by Credit Valley Conservation, please save those questions, because I will allow you to ask your questions or make your statements after the Credit Valley does their presentation. Besides that point, I will take any questions from the public at this time. Mr. Clerk, Mr. Simpson, are there any questions that came in online?
Deputy Mayor Nix, no, there were no questions submitted online for this meeting.
Do any members of the public in the chambers have a question? Yes. Could you push the button and state your name and address, please?
You have to push the button.
Push the button, Louis.
Okay. Thanks. Louis Baker. I live on Mona Center Road, near the airport Road. I have two quick questions. One, we have a town hall meeting coming up in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm wondering when we get the agenda, the public gets the total agenda and can prepare for it. There seems to be total silence coming from.
Well, that's a good point. My memory is, and I think this was published, is that we're going to be dealing with traffic safety, and I think we have an OPP officer invited, and that's the first half of the public meeting. And I think the second half is just open. Any questions that, now, I will stand to be corrected by the CAO, but did I get that right?
So yes, it will be posted, the agenda. Clerk's just waiting on confirmation from the OPP right now as to whether they will attend. Council has signified road safety as the key item to be discussed. And then, as in normal fashion, council will have an open question period.
I think there should be a distribution of those questions to be asked at least 2 weeks before the council, before the meeting.
Yeah, sir. Sorry.
So,
And I
so
don't
if, it-
I don't
if you,
understand why not.
The clerk will answer.
so if you're looking for what questions are going to be asked as opposed to the presentation, those can be submitted if anyone wants to submit them in advance. That can be done now. So that's already up and running. As for the agenda, as was mentioned, we're waiting for confirmation on who from the OPP. If we don't get that in the next few days, we'll just go ahead and publish as a TBA for the presenter.
And I think we should remember that council is coming off of 3 very, very bad town hall meetings. And maybe this is the time we have a little catch-up. And the written confirmation of your questions and what the procedure's gonna be should be in everybody's hands this week. There are groups forming, trying to form, but they have no information.
Okay,
And that's no way to run this place.
okay, and we'll take your comments under advisement. What's your second question?
Thank you. The last question is, Mr. Simpson's memo regarding the parking. When will that be available? When will your report come in?
If you're referring to updating the parking bylaw, that's scheduled for June of this year,
When is scheduled to be
to come to
released?
council.
It will be available on the 15th of this month, June?
June.
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 June. So if I understand your question correctly, Mr. Baker, is when will a revised parking bylaw be coming? Then that is scheduled, not confirmed, but scheduled for June of this year.
My last question before I leave then is, in the fall of last year, I approached you and suggested that the parking, after which we went through for a year, could have been done a lot easier. And I recommended that instead of having two sides of a road with no parking, that one side of each street should have parking on weekends and public holidays. And you thought that was a great idea. I then gave it to the mayor. Great idea. I hope that's all in there now.
Staff will be presenting a amended bylaw based on road safety, and then council will take that and make the final decision whether they accept the recommendation or wish for further amendments to it. But the bylaw will be Public Works' view on what is the safest for the traveling public.
And that is, to me, that's not an acceptable answer. That's a no answer. I'm expecting that to be in your draft.
Okay, so I think we've
Thank
dealt
you.
with that question. Now, we have a delegation. Oh, were there any more questions from the public? Hearing none, we'll move on. I have a delegation at 10:15. It's getting close enough with the forbearance of council. If Credit Valley would like to come forward and introduce yourselves, you have a delegation to make to council. Okay, Bill.
Thank you. Good morning, council, in chambers, online, staff, members of the public in the gallery. My name is Bill Litster. I'm the manager of Conservation Parks for Credit Valley Conservation. I manage all the operations side of all of the parks in our watershed. And with me today, I have Yasmin Slater. She's the superintendent of Island Lake Conservation Area and Ken Willens Resource Management Area. We're here today to ask for an exemption to the town of Mono's noise bylaw that requires us to ask an exemption for any noise that goes amplified sound, I should say. We won't say noise, it's amplified sound after 5 p.m. during the weekdays, holidays, and weekends. So Island Lake Conservation Area sees 250,000 visitors a year. We just went through an extensive management plan for the property that was endorsed by council, several public meetings that public had an opportunity to provide comments into that. Island Lake Conservation Area, for easy figuring, is 800 acres in size, 400 acres of water, 400 acres of land. Through rigorous scientific data, the conservation area is 97% of the property is protected, 3% is development, and probably we're looking at maybe 3.5 with the management plan if everything comes into play. This is our 10th year coming to council asking for exemption to the noise bylaw. And again, thanks to council and working with our neighbors and everything, we've put some parameters in place that we've listened to our neighbors, and we feel that we've satisfied our neighbors, and we have staff, designated staff on site, that if the noise does go past the recommended sound levels, which is 55 decibels, which is probably looking at what we're hearing here talking over the microphones. To date, we haven't had any complaints during these events. Some complaints that we have is outside of the amphitheater, where it's just a busy day in the park, and we've had a few minor complaints, and staff are very fast to react on them. Further to some recommendations from the public, we have a picnic site. We call it Picnic Area 6, and it's adjacent to Island Lake Estates on Blue Heron Drive. We committed to having that as a radio-free zone, and it's been very well received, and again, no complaints to that. Again, this is the first year that we don't have any events planned for 2024, and one of the reasons is the challenges with the noise bylaw. Again, with today's economy, there's a lot of upfront costs when it comes to organizing events, so most groups are reluctant to take a chance and start to plan an event without the noise bylaw exemptions. So with a deal made with council and staff, we would come every year at the beginning of the year to ask for exemption for the entire year. So we're taking a different approach this year, and as you can see from our report, is that we're looking for an exemption to up to 7 events that would occur on a Friday or Saturday night, and the events would go no later than 9:30 p.m. at night. So again, we understand council is opening up the noise bylaw in Q2 of this year, so hopefully by 2025 it won't be required, but we are including in the ask for 2024, 2025, because it usually takes 6 months to a year for people to organize events. To date, we've turned down 2 requests for the use of the amphitheater because of the uncertainty of the noise bylaw exemption. One of them was a charity event for a local service club. And actually, I shouldn't say we turned down one. We have someone waiting for after this meeting for looking at doing movies in the evenings, just inflatable movie screen. That's been a trend happening out there. So that's one. So again, we just want to have that opportunity that we can market it as we have times available for people's events. To date, the trail has been very successful. We have a number of charity walks out on our trail already. It's varies 7 to 10. And again, some of them have asked to have, just speaking on a microphone, to give out the rewards after 5 o'clock. But because the uncertainty of the noise bylaw exemption, they are working within the 5 o'clock time frame. And again, people ask, well, why can't they do it before 5 o'clock? Because what we're finding is that, with a lot of volunteers and everything, is that people work Monday to Friday. So their events have to be after 5 o'clock in the evenings. Again, we've had requests about just dance recitals coming out there to practice on the amphitheater, and the ability to play some amplified music as they dance. But again, the uncertainty has pulled them back from being able to do that. What else do we have here? And again, one of the unique things about the amphitheater is it's a unique setting in the natural environment. So we're drawing people out that might not come to the conservation area. So that gives us an opportunity to educate the people about Island Lake. And, it's the good old saying that if they value it, they'll protect it along with us. So again, a big thing is educating people why we're there. And let's face it, the population is growing around us, so people are coming already. So, how can we work together to mitigate the concerns? And again, I will repeat that we have been very successful. There has been some questions on how it affects nature. Again, we have some internal parameters that we have to work with from our natural heritage, is that from May till mid-June is that it's very minimal amplified sound. Like you might be able to talk on the microphone at the amphitheater, so it's confined within the amphitheater space to respect the nesting birds. And again, we can see the successfulness of it because, again, the last, what has it been, 5 years, Yaz, that we now have a nesting pair of loons on the property. We also, last year, we just had a nesting pair of swans happening, and we have a couple of bald eagles hanging around
I've seen them.
the park right now, and around Deferred County, we're starting to
Yeah.
see them come in. So we're very confident that what we have in place has attributed to the birds coming back. So again, we're here to work with our neighbors.
Okay, is that Yasmin? Did you want to add anything, or is that it?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Before I turn to the public, and I said I'd let the public ask questions, I'll ask if any member of council, Melinda, Ralph, or Elaine, do any of you have questions? Melinda, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Lister, and the materials that were circulated beforehand. It's great to know that you're getting some birds back. That's terrific. That's one checkup for that the conservation part's working. My question is that your ask is actually a blanket approval for 7 events. And as I recall, I've only been on council a couple of years, and you say you've been doing this for 10, so I'm the newbie here. I recall that we didn't go for the 7 events last year because that's for the neighbors. That is every weekend. And so are you optimistic that you need 7 events, or was that 7? Because that's 7 events. The request is 7 events for 2024 and for 2025, correct?
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor Nix, to Councillor Davies. Yes, that is correct. Our internal memo says that we would have 10 to 15 events a year. So we're halving that just to see the demand. I don't recall being turned down for 7 events. I think it was more some of the events that we're having, council didn't feel that were appropriate.
I'm trying to remember if I
And
could,
also,
well, I was going to ask.
yeah, so to follow up,
It's okay. Go ahead,
can I follow up with just with that, Mr. Lister? So, because that was what I had thought, and then my concern then, and to ask you is if we give approval for events that we don't know what they are, because we have had some that events, we've been kind of burned by some people who want to have events and tell us it's one thing and it turns out to be another, which even if we didn't approve it, it ends up causing a problem for the community. And so the type of events, is there any chance, because you then have approval for the 7, which when now you say you'd really prefer to have 10 to 15, then that you might be a little bit more lenient as to the type of events, because it's been a low ask? That's my question.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Nix, to Councillor Davies. Again, Credit Valley, we vet all of the event requests that are coming in. So again, they have to align with our strategic plan. And again, being in the business for 20 years is that, again, protection is at the forefront for us as well. But again, because of the noise bylaw, like we're just talking that if somebody wants to talk on a microphone after 5 o'clock, we don't want to be against the noise bylaw. So again, it would be low-key things. Is there a possibility for a concert? Yes, there is. We have had concerts in the past, like Canada Day concert. Again, no concerns with that. We've opted not to do a Canada Day concert because, again, we have some parameters that now with the changes with the Conservation Authorities Act is all of our events have to be revenue neutral, or again, my goal is that we would like to see us make a little bit of money. We know the Friends of Island Lake, they're just looking at a big project, multi-year project for probably about $1.5 million on a trail. They're looking at opportunities to utilize the amphitheater as a fundraiser. And again, what we're seeing is most of the time it's fundraising events. We do have requests for weddings, as we have had in the past. And again, it's just mainly playing some background music or saying their speeches over a microphone. And again, what we find is that that sound is confined within the amphitheater site where it is now. It's not even going out past, say, the canoe kayak storage, just within 500 meters of the amphitheater itself.
Does that satisfy your question, Councillor Davey?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, any other member? Yes, Councillor Manklow.
Thanks, Mr. Lister, for your presentation. I do understand the need for organizers to coordinate and have some lead time of 6 months or more. And your practice has been to come to us, I think, once a year with a list of events that you'd like approved. Is there any reason why you couldn't come to us earlier? I mean, maybe it's a little bit harder to organize, but when you have a request, come to us and give them the 6 months or 8 months of lead time. That's my first question.
So through you, Deputy Mayor, next to Councillor Mantalo. Again, Councillor Mantalo, it was an agreement that we came up with council and staff that we would come each year in April for the entire year. So we wanted to have one-stop shop rather than coming every 6 months to ask for events. It was easier to ask for a yearly, or in this case, we're asking for a 2-year exemption.
You have another
Okay, so
question?
my comment is that it'd be very easy to change that sort of informal policy, and you could come more frequently. I don't see that's a problem. As you know, there's significant concern about the development of this whole area as an event center, and I understand what's behind that, and that it's financial, and you're trying to balance the economy with the natural environment. And it seems to me that if the economy is here and the natural environment is here, the economy is the one that's winning out right now, and the natural environment is losing. We have a recommendation for a certain sound level at the point of reception, but the point of reception is not for all the critters which are living in the park, it's for people. And so I think that's one of the concerns that is a number of our Mono residents have written to us and indicated that we should be concerned about the sound level at the point of creation rather than reception. You have cited success with the birds, but I think this was during the time when you didn't have events. I think you had 2 events last year and maybe 2 the year before. So if I'm not mistaken, then that's not really a very valid conclusion. This is a problem which, as you know, bothers particularly people in the area. They don't like the level of sound, even up to 55 decibels, and I appreciate that because they purchased homes there thinking that they're beside a conservation area, which was an area which was devoted to natural heritage issues, and they support the environment and not for the event center. So I'm sure you appreciate that. That's going on. That's all. Thank you. You're next.
Was that a question, Ralph, or that was just a statement, right?
That was hopefully a useful comment.
Okay. Any other questions or statement? Yes, Councillor Capes.
Thank you for your presentation. What are your normal hours of operation?
Thank you for the question. Normally, we operate, right now we're operating from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and on weekends 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then when we get into the after May long weekend, It's 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. and then 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends and stat holidays.
Okay, so 9 PM is the
When we
park closing.
when we
kind
close
of-
the gates, yeah, staff are still around till about 10 o'clock, cleaning up and shutting down.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I'm not clear about what the upfront costs are that you mentioned, that the upfront costs are getting too expensive for people to want to look into booking without knowing they can use the facility and use a microphone.
Through your Deputy Mayor Nix to Councillor Cape. So there is the marketing material upfront costs if they start to hire designers and everything to get their pamphlets and everything ready to be able to do that. Again, we ask for a deposit for the use of the amphitheater, so they have to have some money outlying there. And again, a lot of it might not be monetary, but again, a lot of places are dealing with volunteers, so they have to have time to get volunteers organized for the events as well. So I wouldn't say there's tons, but there is some minor upfront costs, probably close to $1,000 or something.
Okay, and do you have like an application intake period that's like January to March so that people can come to you and ask about their events and holding them there?
No, we don't have an application process. It's usually just cold calls that somebody will call in and they're looking to do events. And again, you know, when it comes to planning events, it starts with just an inquiry. And so the first, when they ask, we say, well, we have to adhere to the noise bylaw. So sometimes that puts a bad taste in their mouth and they don't want to pursue it any further. Again, so if we say, yep, well, here's the parameters, you can either have it on a Friday or Saturday, you can't go past this time, then people are more apt to go, okay, now we can start planning. And again, we find out all the information on what the event is, the number of people, what they plan on doing as far as amplified sound. So we vet it ourselves and make that decision. And again, it has to align with our strategic plan.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any questions for you. I just will say to the public who's watching and the audience that I've been in the past very impressed with the way CBC has monitored the events and the noise level. I remember one year you gave us the sound levels, which are supposed to be 55 decibels on the Vicky Barron Trail as you go around the Island Lake, and you couldn't get a reading at the far east end because someone was using their lawnmower on Blue Heron Drive, which just puts a bit into perspective what 55 decibels is like. It's conversation level noise, and if someone wants to use their lawnmower on Blue Heron Drive, they're going to be a lot louder than that. All right, that's all the comments we have from council. I know we have a couple of members of the public who have some questions. Mr. Darby, perhaps the easiest thing for you to do is to come up here and use, is that okay, Mr. Simpson?
Perhaps we could use one of the two mics at the council chambers?
I just didn't want a crowd, Bill, but okay, Mark, if you want to sit there. I should also say, and I will take your advice on this, Mr. Simpson, the council did have one letter. Is that from a resident about this issue? Is that part of the public domain, or is that just we to keep it to ourselves?
Did that come to the clerk's office?
No.
No, so it's not yet. That, at this point, is a constituent record, and it's not yet in the public domain.
Okay, then I will.
But as soon as it's sent to my office, then it'll be a public record.
I think I CC'd you on my response, but I can't remember. Okay, it's not public record now. So other than that email that we got, we have, Mr. Darby, do you want to state your name and your address and your concerns or questions?
Yes, it's Mark Darby, and it's 713-189 First Line East, Mono, which is basically at the east end of the Island Lake Conservation Area. And I'm sorry, what was the last thing that we were saying? I was in motion and I didn't know.
I was saying, in addition to you wanting to ask a question, we had one member of the public send an email, but the email was only sent to council, not to the clerk, so it technically is not in the public domain.
Oh, okay, so not relevant to my comments?
No.
Okay, well, thank you so much. So good morning, Deputy Mayor Nix and council members, wherever you are, and everyone here, of course. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in opposition to my CVC friends here blanket noise bylaw exemption request. And I respectfully find it unethical that Credit Valley Concerts wants council to approve their carte blanche blanket noise exemption request, simply because they want to host holiday and after-work hours loud noise pollution and sometimes even beer concert events in our very sensitive ecological areas. I find it's absolutely unconscionable that my friends, who are the professionally trained subject matter experts that we pay to protect the conservation area from pollution, and we do have an ever-increasing levy from the CBC, these are actually the people who are requesting environmentally harmful pollution concerts in our park. The CBC states in their report, and I'm quoting, "align with the Town of Mono Council's commitment to preserve the natural heritage." It is obvious that that statement is false, and it's actually antithetical to the CBC mandate because numerous scientific studies, and I put them in last year, there was dozens of them from the scientists, have all confirmed that these loud noises will cause harm to our natural heritage life. There's none of these studies say, oh, there's a whole bunch of advantages to have 100 dB noise to the environment and the animals. And it's intuitive. Like if you see deer or geese or swans, you make noise, they're gone. They're not going to be around anywhere in that area. So I think just intuitively it makes sense that the ecosystem is not going to be around there if there's loud noise. And the report goes on and on at great lengths defining all the steps they're going to take to record noise events with approved, and I don't know what approved recording devices are, but all that verbiage is a total attempted diversionary red herring because they're not taking measurements at source. They're not publishing those results. We know that 55 decibels exceeds provincial noise pollution control guideline maximums that state that limit values for outdoor points of reception are 45 for the night hours and 50 dB decibels for some time periods. Some of these events have had noise levels professionally measured at source, not 5 kilometers away, by licensed certified sound engineers that exceed 106 decibels. And we have the actual readings here from these people. And it should be noted that 110 decibels can cause permanent hearing loss. And 110 decibels is going to be just kryptonite for the any creatures that's going to be around there. We won't have the swans or geese in that area. And secondly, they only mention measurements at points of reception. That's away from the source. It's obvious that it's imperative that pollution should be measured at source, whatever it is, in the park, not distant locations. No one is against these events, but we all know with certainty that there are many, many other more suitable venues where these events can be held, where they will not cause any harm whatsoever to our natural environment. And just like Councillor Mankhino mentioned, the creatures will not be anywhere near the noise. So to ensure complete information and transparency, I believe that council and residents of Mono are entitled to receive the easily obtainable, because they already have all their equipment, peak source LMAX sound level measurements information for every event, because they do publish the events at the points of reception. They have the equipment, and I don't know if it's approved or not, in my opinion, but those could be right at source. And then we would have the pollution, the noise pollution measurements at source. It's information, and I think it would be valuable. In conclusion, I feel the hook coming. And this is the conclusion. I ask council to deny the CBC noise bylaw exemption request, or otherwise, number 2, have independent professional sound engineers report the LMAX sound volumes at source and limit the point of reception maximums to 50 decibels as per provincial noise guidelines. And number 3, my final one, and this should be fairly easy, is request that CVC staff include peak source decibels that they take with their approved devices for all events in their noise reports to council, and pre-publish the times and dates as per, they've done that for 10 years. The universe hasn't changed. So, you know, I mean, we've always had the times, the dates, and all that. That's a good chart. So, wrapping it up, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to this issue, and for council and staff's dedicated, professional, ongoing efforts to ensure that our town continues to be such a great place to live. Thank you, and I'm available for questions or...
The hook was coming out, Mr. Darby, but you're finished, and thank you. You raised some excellent points. Does CBC, Bill or Yasmin, do you want to refute any of this or respond? You don't have to, but if you want to, please feel free to respond to Mr. Darby.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor Nix. Again, I think we would, our stance is that we would respectfully disagree with Mr. Darby. Again, we're not aware of during any of these events of Mr. Darby having a complaint with any of our events. And again, we're not here to match wits, so we've proven that we've been very responsible and we've had no complaints to date.
Okay, does any member of council want to question Mr. Darby on his statements? Hearing none, I'm going to thank you for your questions, Mr. Darby, and I'm going to thank the CBC for their presentation, and I'm now going to put a motion on the floor and see if I get a mover and a seconder. Okay?
Sure.
Oh, was there another? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand. Do you want to come up and use the microphone that Mr. Darby was using?
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
You want to state your name and address, please?
Yes, my name is Rita Reitzma, and I live on the 25th Side Road at 428081.
Thank you.
And I appreciate this chance for us to talk because I think it's a broader question, too, that's involved here. And so I'll just, I resonate a lot with what Mark talked about, and I think even thinking of not to prejudge dance recitals, but many of the dance recitals don't really fit with that kind of environment in my view, unless it was like modern dance that was very quiet and so on. So this is my question. In this time of climate emergency, using this local example, would the town of Mono be willing to write another letter to the province demanding restoration of adequate funding to our excellent CVCs, and that they work in genuine partnership with CVCs rather than pressuring them to generate more money?
Well, thank you. I can't answer that. I mean,
Just want to leave it with you to think about. Because I think it's like downloading in education too, right? The parents have to do the educating for the curriculum that's rotten, rather than us say, hey, it's not their fault, you know?
I will just add, being on the board of two different conservation authorities now for over 30 years, and I'm going on memory, Bill, for in CBC's case, but I think provincial government funding of CBC is, it's less than 1% of their total revenues. I
Yeah.
mean, the province has abandoned conservation authority.
Exactly.
So I certainly am in sympathy with what you're asking council to do, and leave that with us,
Yeah.
okay?
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of the public who want to comment on the deputation from Credit Valley Conservation? All right, hearing none, then I'm going to put this motion on the floor. It's a lengthy one. That council approves the request of Credit Valley Conservation for exemption to noise bylaw 2004-16 with the following terms and conditions. 1, a maximum of 7 events from May 24th to October 14th, 2024. Bill's writing, so I'll read slowly. 2, events may only occur on either a Friday, Saturday, or statutory holiday. Fast writer. We can give you a copy of this after. Yeah. 3, events will end no later than 9:30 p.m. 4, Credit Valley Conservation will ensure that sound levels do not exceed 55 decibels at the points of reception, and will take remedial actions if they do exceed this threshold. And 5, Credit Valley Conservation will provide the Town of Mono's noise bylaw officer with contact numbers for the on-site superintendent in charge of the event to make any recommended adjustments to the sound levels immediately. And that this is the important part, and that this exemption shall apply to the same period in 2025, that is May 23rd, 2025 to October 13th, 2025, with the same terms and conditions. Now, that's the motion that I have in front of me. I need a mover and a seconder. We have it. We have a mover. Councillor Mantlo, Councillor Davey. Do we have a seconder? We don't. Well then, oh, Councillor Davey, is that your hand going up?
Well, I'm just, and again, we've had a delegation. We have
Councillor Davey,
I don't know where the.
sorry, I don't want to discuss the motion. We can't discuss it.
I know,
until-
I'm asking for the procedure. I'm asking.
The procedure is this. We can discuss the motion once it's on the floor. To get it on the floor, I need a
Right,
seconder.
so-
Are you seconding the
Right,
motion?
so I'm asking you a question, Deputy Mayor. I'm asking you a question. Seconding this so that we can discuss it is what you're asking for right now.
That's right.
Only.
That's right.
Thank you. So I will second it, Deputy Mayor.
The
Thank
motion
you.
is now on the floor. Council can freely discuss the motion now. Councillor Davey, did you want to discuss the motion?
Well, I just wanted to ask, it's my understanding from the reading materials that this was the request, that a motion has been prepared that actually has all the items of the request. In contrast to Councillor Mantlo's question earlier, and my question regarding the actual type of event, that I might be inclined to agree to this if there were some tweaks in it, i.e. I'm not comfortable with a blanket thing for 2 whole years, and who knows what the events are and so on, and also to not perhaps to include some of Mr. Darby's comments with respect to decibels at source or whatever. So I mean, is that what we're discussing, or we're in a situation where these items, what did I write down? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items are what the motion is. So it's yea or nay on that.
That is what we are discussing. You are quite free to move an amendment if you so choose. If you want to add any of those items to the motion, you can move an amendment. We then will deal with the amendment before we deal with the main motion. Do you want to think about that for a minute, and I'll go to the other councillors and see if they have comments? All right. Councillor Mantlo, Councillor Capes, do you have comments? Councillor Capes.
I do have comments, and it's my personal appreciation to be able to go to Island Lake. It is a jewel where we are, and I have enjoyed walking there. I have enjoyed many fundraising walking events, and I also enjoy canoeing there. And I fully appreciate the due diligence that you take, and that you take this responsibility not lightly to preserve and protect this wonderful space. I do, however, feel it wouldn't be responsible of me to give a blanket agreement, even though I appreciate and recognize that you take responsibility for the events. I do not feel it would be within good responsibility on my part to just give a blanket statement for any event, and I would prefer to see the list of events come forward so that I could personally review them, see them, and determine if what the noise was that was going to be happening would be appropriate for the town of Mono and our citizens of the woods. And so I'm reluctant to accept that motion the way it sits. And in that we have this motion or this bylaw coming forward to council in the next year, I would be very reluctant to give a blanket for 2 years. So that's my comment.
All right, well, I will say the same as I said to Councillor Davey. If you want to think of an amendment to this motion or vote against it, that's your choice. I'll give you a few minutes to think about that. I see Councillor Mantlo's hand up. Yes, Councillor Mantlo.
I think this is I understand where, Bill, you're coming from, but I think it's a problem for council. because we've always felt some responsibility to the people of Mono to decide what is an appropriate a noise level. For example, the Canada Day weekend, we're supportive of that. I have a problem with voting on this as a blanket request. And I think that the idea of coming to council more frequently is one that I can entertain very easily. And so if you have a request, you come the next council meeting or two and ask for permission, and maybe it's in November sometime, which is appropriate to the organizers and helps them, I think that would be a solution here without us giving you a blanket support.
Councillor Davey, your hand's back up. Go ahead. Go ahead, Melinda.
She's frozen.
Oh. Melinda, you're frozen.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm a here. Yes, I'm sorry. Sorry for the technology's great. Well, that was kind of what I was going to ask. And another procedural question, please, for clarification. Could delegations can be in writing, right? The Conservation Authority can have an application, and can they put a delegation into writing so that the council, I mean, we meet every couple of weeks. We could turn around a request for an event rather quickly, couldn't we?
Let me just pause for a minute here. I'd like to ask the clerk a question. We have a motion on the floor. There's a possibility some members of council may want to add an amendment, although I haven't heard an amendment motion yet. Is it possible to put the motion for a vote and then informally or formally ask the Credit Valley that when they do have a party that wants to rent their facility, one of the 7 times, to come to us with a list? Is that possible to ask them that so that we can see it? I suppose that what that says is we would have second right to approve or disapprove of that group having the event on that date. I'm looking for your advice here, Mr. Simpson.
So on the first question, Deputy Mayor Nix, of course, council can pass or deny the application and the motion, or amend the motion, as you pointed out. As for applications coming before council, the bylaw does require a $1,000 fee for every exemption, and it does require a notice period with it being posted in a local newspaper. So that does add a burden to coming multiple times, both time and cost.
Yeah, I'll let Mr. Lidster, he wants, sorry.
Sorry, and if I may, council, of course, as part of an amendment, could strike out the last phrase of that motion, asking for 2025, if they so choose.
Yeah, I'm also mindful of the clock, my fellow councillors. We have a delegation at 10 o'clock, so I want to stick to that time limit. Mr. Lidster, you wanted to respond to these conversations so far?
Yes, thanks, Deputy Mayor Nixon. I believe you've read that it's 60 days notice as well, according to the noise bylaw. And again, with all due respect, we're here asking for an exemption to the noise bylaw. We're not asking for the council to vet our events, because the noise sound is the noise sound regardless of the event.
Okay, I'm going to ask councillors now. You've all spoken, you've all had reservations about the motion on the floor. Do any of you have an amendment motion that you'd like to put on the floor? All right, hearing none, I'm going to call the question on the motion as read. All those in favor? All those against? The motion fails. Sorry, folks, but that's the way democracy works. We have a delegation at in 7 minutes. Do you want to take a 3-minute recess? And we'll come back.
Sure.
Because it's pointless for me to go on to other business. It just gets too complicated. We'll put you on at 10 o'clock, okay? Andrew, we're in recess for 3 or 4 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. We are now coming out of recess, and we have a delegation scheduled for 10 o'clock. This is a statutory public meeting for the Little Sprouts School. That's what it says. It's the Little Sprouts Licensed Daycare Facility. We have a planning report written for us. Mr. Simpson, is there any member of staff that I mean, we can all read the planning report. Is there any member of staff that wants to speak to this report?
Deputy Mayor Nix, maybe we just use this opportunity to move into the public meeting.
Okay, I have
And-
to pass a motion to do that, don't I? Yes. I knew that. I was catching up, Mr. Simpson. So we got to go into a public meeting now. I have a motion that we adjourn the regular meeting of council and go into a public meeting to discuss zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 2023-1. Shouldn't it be 2024?
No, I believe the number is correct, Deputy Mayor.
Oh, because it came in last fall, yes. I need a mover and a seconder for this motion. Councillor Capes moves it. Councillor Davy seconds it. All in favor? Thank you. That motion passes. We are now in a public meeting with staff scrambling back to their chairs. We have two reports here, or at least one report. We have a planning report, and then we have the applicant. Mr. Trotter, do you want to speak to this planning report that you wrote to us, this excellent report?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nix. Yes, I can do that just briefly. And then the good folks over here, the Arsenaults, I believe Giselle and Chantel will make their presentation with
Okay.
their PowerPoint.
Okay.
So, thanks for everyone in attendance today. This is a statutory public meeting under the Planning Act. It's required when someone wants to come forward with a material change of use under the zoning. Right now, Chantel operates a daycare that I think is not licensed, if I can say that, but it's only for 5 children. So it's like a home care, oh, maybe I got that wrong. Okay. I apologize. So it is licensed at 6. They want to increase that given the available capacity of the existing building on the property, which is on Hockley Road, 308-618 Hockley Road in the hamlet, to 25 children. That will need, of course, also a license or an updated license. Excuse me. I've provided council with a fairly fulsome report. This application came in last year. It did proceed to Planning Committee for their review and comments. The minutes are uploaded and also may allude to in my report. That was back in September. There was some time going back and forth about the servicing of the septic system and the well and the parking. Those matters were identified at Planning Committee, but they did support getting the applicants obtain an amendment to their zoning to add a daycare. And that's what that report says. They're not going to change it to commercial zone. They're simply going to specialize the rural hamlet zone to add one daycare with a maximum child count of 25 children. We did go through proper notice. There's a signboard on the property. It was in the Orangeville Citizen and, of course, through local area mail-out. And that was for both meetings, by the way. The Plan Committee meeting, which is not a statutory meeting, that was for committee to review, and today here under the Planning Act. I won't go into all the details of the back and forth on finding, investigating the septic systems and the potable well. They will need to be examined as part of this, what is a change of use permit under the building code. So they're not adding built form, they're simply adding a change of use, but it is it's a commercial use by nature. And so the report reflects that, and they will have to look at the septic system and the well, and then deal with the on-site parking. And that was sort of a matter that had to be reviewed. It was, and they've retained an architect. I believe Mr. Gowling, Wesley Gowling, is online to speak to his letter from just this past week, April the 5th. And he's had some experience in designing daycare facilities. So he, in his view, notwithstanding the chart I've added, the review in front of Planning Committee, to some measure my own degree of expectation, he said that 6 on-site parking stalls will suffice for a daycare of 25 children. So it kind of check marks that box. That was an issue that needed to be reviewed. Beyond that, there is a draft zoning bylaw amendment that you have in front of you. The only other thing I'll note is that Planning Committee, because of some of the site plan matters, the septic system, the well, ingress and egress, drop off and pickup of children, came to a recommendation of, well, maybe we should, put this through site plan control or have a development agreement crafted by the town solicitor. That's still a possible option if council wants to deliberate that. But my report alludes to perhaps just using a holding provision. We'll call it a light switch option. The zoning can be approved with a hold, and that doesn't get removed until the matters outlined in the bylaw are compliant. And those are, the septic system is current code compliant. The potable water system is current building code compliant. Public Works compliant. And by the way, I can give you an update on that. It will be. You can almost check mark that box. And in fact, C can probably come off at this point. And FPO, Fire Prevention Officer, compliant. Now, we have comments uploaded for both. I just want to ensure that FPO in final review, proceeding to the licensing, are still happy and amenable with the proposal as it's designed. And then the final one is a Ministry of Education. Now, I get the chicken and the egg situation with getting a license from the licensing board after they get approval of the zoning amendments. But I think this approach does that. They can take this zoning amendment to the licensing board and say, well, it's approved with a hold. Are there any other matters through the site plan aspect of this proposal, not the operational matters, that you, the licensing board would like to see on site? And if there are, well, okay, they'll let us know what they are. Of course, the follow-up will be that Chantel has to comply with their operational matters. How many, what needs to be in the washrooms, for example, and all those matters with respect to day-to-day operation of a daycare. So there's 2 aspects to the licensing as I understand it. I really don't have too much more to say. I believe they're going to make their presentation, and then I suppose if council has questions for the applicant or their architect, Wesley Gowan from Dixon Hicks Architects in Orangeville, or myself for that matter, then we're at your disposal.
Excellent. Very comprehensive report. Very good report. And in your possible bylaw, the conditions that have to be met to me, are quite onerous, and I guess that's why we have a delegation here today to explain to us how they're going to get around them, or if they have got around them. Would you like to come up and take a chair and push the red button and state your name and address? Chantel, sorry.
Thank you, David, for your report and for speaking and for having us today. My name is Chantal Arsenault, and I'm at 55 Chisholm Street in Orangeville. And I am the co-owner, director, and head teacher at Little Sprouts School. I have with me my mom, Giselle Arsenault, and my dad, Nick Arsenault. He's maintenance crew. She's also co-owner and director, and Jill of all trades, and my bookkeeper also. And then my husband, Brian Murphy, who's part of our maintenance crew. We're super happy to be here. Thank you for having us, everyone online also. So we have been working diligently for 1.5 years on this process. We've been working with David Trotman through this rezoning process. It's been exciting as we have learned the steps to opening a new daycare, but also challenging as we've navigated through family events beyond our control. So it has taken us longer than we had expected when we started the process. We have retained also our architect, who's online, Wesley, who has also helped us through this process. And I'll speak to the parking as our slides come up. I'm not sure how to get
Mr. Simpson, can you show her how to?
Mr. Dahmer, can you put the presentation on screen, please? Thank you.
So we've been open since 2022 as a licensed home daycare. So we have had an agency that comes in and licenses us, checks on us every month, makes sure that we are within our parameters as a licensed home daycare because we're currently a residential building. There we go. Again, thank you for having us here today. So we are here for the rezoning with the town of Mono. So we are looking, in support of our rezoning, we have provided the town of Mono with the survey, the site plan, and a floor plan, which were mentioned at our last meeting. And then our parking, we have a letter from our architect, Wesley Gowling, who is in attendance today, stating that our parking is sufficient, as is, for 25 kids, instead of the zoning bylaw requirement, which is 10 parking spots. So the letter states that 6 spots is sufficient to operate as a licensed daycare with 25 children. So this is our survey. In our survey, you can see our playground. So we are a nature-inspired daycare. We do have a separate spot that is fenced in for our outdoor classroom, which allows us our space. We can fit 25 children at one time or on a rotating basis. We have 3 classrooms, but we can all fit on that playground at once. And then our usual items, so the septic and the well will also be in there.
So just don't go too fast. Those are the parking spots along the Hockley Road, right? 1, 2, 3. No, are those parking spots?
So on the next, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I'll go to the next one here. Okay, so this is our site plan. So we currently, right now, have enough for 6 parking spots with a roundabout driveway, which allows for emergency vehicles if we need it, with those 6 spots there to enter and exit at all times. We can do staggered drop-off and pickup times, so to alleviate any congestion that might happen. And we would have enter and exit signs to show the flow of the driveway and the roundabout in. Our outdoor lighting is Mono compliant. Our sign is Mono bylaw compliant. Our landscaping can be enhanced, and I'll speak to that later. And our building is Ontario Building Code compliant. We haven't done any work on the building and don't expect that there would need to be any work done on the actual building. As we've painted and freshened it up with new trim and stuff, but we haven't had to do any actual structural building. This is our floor plan. So we have 3 classrooms. We've got 1 larger one in the front and then 2 in the back. Each classroom has a washroom for the children. We also have a staff room, an office space, and a staff bathroom. We don't, again, we haven't done any construction to ensure that it was already like that. So just for your viewing, this is our letter from Wesley stating that with respect to the existing 6 parking spaces located at the address noted above, based on our experience in daycare design, we believe 6 parking spaces is sufficient for the proper functioning of Little Sprout School for 25 children. With the approval of the rezoning, Dufferin County can release the grant money that we have already secured. They will not release that money without the approval. With that money, we can do the work that needs to be done in order to move forward with the Ministry of Education. That includes the floor plan with D&H Architect. They have already been to the site, so they're already prepared to do, and we've already spoken to them about the floor plans, our floor space, how many children we expect to be allotted for our existing floor space for each classroom. Highland water well drilling, they have also been to the site, or to our location, and they are prepared with the funding money, the grant money, to fill the existing well and do a drilled well, which would be daycare compliant for a licensed daycare through the Ministry of Education. We also have Headwaters Construction, who have been to our location, and they are prepared to do a new septic for us, which would be daycare compliant through the Ministry of Education. So this is the front of our school and our fenced-in yard. So the yellow structure there is actually our outdoor classroom, which allows us to, we are a nature-inspired school, so it is equipped to be a classroom. We can be outside kind of in all weather. We have some storage space, and then that's the front of our school. So that is the front classroom that you're looking at there. So as far as sustainability, I've been in the childcare business for almost 20 years in different capacities. And when I started in the business, the need for childcare was not what it is now. So we are getting families who are asking for childcare spots for 2025. So they haven't even had children. So the need in the area, and we have letters of support from our families that either have children enrolled already for their sibling or people of the community. We have families that are coming from different counties currently now to be in our care. We have currently 40 families on our wait list. This number has been as high as 60 families. We actually had to stop taking wait list because we currently only can have 6 children. So we actually had to stop our taking those waitlist families because the need is just so high. And like I said, we have families coming from different counties, not just a different county coming into our care. So with the rezoning, we would be going for the change of use. And then our last step is through the Ministry of Education. We started the process with the Ministry of Education a year and a half ago. I have 95% of our policies and procedures that have already been approved. So I've submitted it into their portal. They've already approved them. We've currently been using all of those policies and procedures now as a home daycare, which we don't need to be. But our staff is trained to operate as a licensed daycare through the ministry. But we have 2 more documents, which is our program statement and our parent handbook. Those are our last 2 documents that we need to get approved, and they have stalled our application. They're actually prepared to pull our application if our process hasn't moved forward by April 12th? Friday of this week. So, and so that would mean we would have to restart the process with them all over again. So with our daycare, and my knowledge, I've worked in capacities where I've been part of opening daycares as a staff and as a director. And with what we have now, we are sufficient and don't foresee any issues structurally or things that we cannot do to make it sufficient to operate as a licensed daycare through the Ministry of Education. Once we have those approvals, we would then bring in the fire department, we would bring in public health, and they would tell us what needs to be done and that we're okay to operate the way we are. So to end our presentation, we at Little Sprout School asks for the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment so we can acquire the money from Deferred County to do the work that we need to do to get our change of use and then to further move forward with the Ministry of Education to get our approvals to provide a quality, licensed, nature-inspired childcare within the community.
Excellent. I think, I'm going to ask council if they have any comments or questions, but I think the minutes, Mr. Simpson should record that this is a statutory public meeting, and there's no members of the public who are present to ask questions. I think the minutes should record that. Do any members of council have, there are, though, in our package, several letters of support. I'm just saying there's no one here in the audience that's appeared for this presentation. Do members of council have questions? Yes, Councillor Manctillo, your hand's up.
Okay, is my
I was
microphone
going to say, I
on?
can't see him. Yeah.
Okay, thanks Chantal for your presentation. I know where you are, as I live fairly close to your location, and I'm quite supportive of your application. I have a few questions. I understand the immediacy of the need for this zoning bylaw with respect to the other things that are going on, and that's the reason for us, and this is partly a question to Dave Troppin. The reason for us being asked to approve the zoning withholding provisions is because of the time issues with respect to the release of grants and the application, et cetera. Is that the idea, Dave? It's a process issue? Because it seemed to me that the thing to do is you get understanding that, definite understanding that you did have a water access, a clean water access. You did have room for septic systems, et cetera, before we approved the zoning bylaw change. Do you understand my question?
What did he say?
I'm asking it to Dave Troppin.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Nix, I think I understood what Councillor Manctillo was inquiring
Let me
about.
rephrase it for you, because I'm a little bit garbled there. We're being asked to do a zoning bylaw amendment with holding provisions. Why not just wait until we get these items like septic and water and et cetera confirmed, so we don't need holding provisions, and then approve the bylaw?
You can answer that.
I can answer that for you, Councillor Manctillo. The applicants, as you can understand, have to invest a fair bit of money to upgrade the septic system, the water well. We have to deal with parking, as I noted, fire protection. Chantal's noted the health department, and they've been trying to get to a bit more certainty in front of council on the amendment. That's not unusual. That happens, and so here we are. I mean, we can look at other applications we've seen. We saw a very large development recently where all the reports were submitted over for an application off the second line, and they've sort of front-ended a lot of those studies, if you will, to support and facilitate their application. So, you know, these good folks aren't that application. I suppose I could mention my name, doesn't really matter. And so they're looking for certainty through a zoning amendment. The only way, therefore, to ensure that a septic system, which is not probably compliant right now on that site on Hockley Road, and the well, same thing, is to apply a holding provision. You know, we'll call it a padlock or a light switch, if you will, so that the fundamental use is approved by council, a daycare for up to 25 children. But these technical matters hold the bylaw from going into force until those things are compliant. So a holding provision is another approach where there may be a few key items or small items that need to be addressed, or where putting an applicant through a site plan agreement or development agreement may be a bit onerous, at least in the time frame that they've got. That's why. So there have been holding provisions in other zones in Mono. The hotel was one, for example. And this is similar, although for a different reason.
Very thorough response, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Ralph?
I have a follow-up with Deputy Mayor, if that's okay.
Sorry, what do you say?
I say I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Chantal, you'll be dropping kids off there, the cars dropping, could be 10 cars, could be 20 cars, I suppose, within a short space of time. Can you handle that in a safe way? I know you've got a limited driveway coming into your place, it's sort of a circular driveway, And I presume they're going to come in there and drop them off, but otherwise, some cars are going to be sitting out the road waiting for others to move. Is that going to be a safe issue for you?
So thank you for your question. We have plans to do drop-off and pick-up timeframes. So with all due respect, during COVID, working frontline, we had families, not at our site, in a different capacity, but where there was certain time frames, which typically parents have a certain time because they're normally going to work. So they drop off and pick up at the same time within reason. So we are prepared to set that up for families to prevent the congestion. And then pickup time would be, again, the same thing, where they would have their drop-off and pickup times to prevent that congestion.
Okay, is that okay, Councillor Manklow?
No other questions, thank you.
All right, Councillor Davey.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Super excited. Pleased to know that you have a daycare already running for the few small families that you're able to service. So this sounds like a great idea and something that Mono needs. I know when I was campaigning, this was certainly something. I'm really concerned about the parking. If you've got 3 classrooms, you're there, your bookkeeper, I suppose, could be off-site, but it's my understanding that from the preamble of reading your materials that perhaps she's there already with a car. You live in Orangeville, you got to come with a car. Your 6 spots are going to be full all of the time. So if I'm a parent or a couple of parents and I'm coming to do the pickup, it just seems to me that there really is going to be a problem or cars parked on the road. And is there parking allowed on your road at the moment?
Yes, yeah, there's no parking signs currently at that spot.
There are no parking signs.
No, and
Because I know we have a lot of parking.
so again, parents, in speaking with ratios too, normally you don't have all your staff at the same time, starting at the same time. So you have your 7 to 8 staff, like 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. staff, and they can be alone with 8 children. So depending on the ages of the children. So you would only have 1 staff vehicle in the driveway. And if we have the allotted drop-off and pickup times, we will know when we're at capacity and when we would need all staff on site, which we have enough spots for parking for all staff with the 6 spots and 25
Right,
children.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's my question. That
Yes.
the parking spots are not for your families. Therefore, so I'm as a family am meant to keep moving. If you
So,
have a roundabout
yes.
and it's only dropping off, but there will be no spot for me when I come to at some other unusual time. Should something happen, I need to meet with a teacher or you're having a little dance recital or whatever. There is no parking in the facility. It will be used by your staff. If you go with saying your architect saying that you're already fine with 6 spots.
Correct. So families are already aware that drop-off time is not a time to have a lengthy discussion with the educators. If they would like that, then we would set that time up either earlier in the morning or later in the afternoon when there's less children and that staff is not in class. During class time is not an appropriate time to have a discussion about potential behaviors or other things. So that would be a private conversation, and that would happen, like I said, when there are less children and less staff at the school. So then there would be a reserved parking spot for that.
Okay, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Davey? Councillor Capes, are you finished, Councillor Davey? Okay, Councillor Capes.
Thank you very much. I think you're courageous and obviously very committed, or you wouldn't be going down this path. So I think, government said we're going to have so many thousands of spaces for children to be cared for, and now we're struggling to find those places. So it's a desperate need for sure. So I appreciate that. And I'm sure our little people and their parents really appreciate it too. So what is the home currently being used for?
Just the daycare for the
Okay.
children, yes,
Okay,
yeah,
'cause-
yeah.
and maybe I got this wrong looking at the site plan, but it looks like there's bathtubs in all of those bathrooms.
So before we began using it as a home daycare, yes, it was. So they were separate living spaces for other adults.
So
So,
are those
but we'll
bathtubs being removed?
You know what? As being in the field for 15 years, maybe not.
not? 'Cause
Because
those
sometimes,
kids, when they get
yeah,
dirty, you
let's
can
be
just
honest, and
plunge them?
we're a nature-inspired school, so lots of outdoor play. So to be honest, unless we have to, so
Right,
that would be part of the next process of with our site plan and how much space we need in the bathroom, because depending on the ages of the children, we may need a change table, and those types of things. So if we have to remove it, absolutely, but my professional opinion, no.
Duncan tanks.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then, what does it mean when it says family group?
So, so under the Ministry of Education, you have your infants, your toddlers, your preschoolers, and then your school-age children. School age is divided into also 2 age groups. So based on their ages, you have a certain ratio. So for infant, it's 1 to 3. For toddler, it's 5 to 1. With family grouping, the term and the use of family grouping is fairly new, I think within the last 10 years. And it was created for smaller centers like us because it can be hard to rotate children from a toddler to a preschool room unless there's room. So if you have that classroom full, or they're not preschool age, you cannot move them up to make room for potentially an infant to move up to toddler. So it allows for multiple age groups to be within the same. But there are still ratios that we have to follow.
Right,
Yeah.
oh, okay, thank you for that. And then, I think that's it. So, thank you very much. Oh, I do have one concern, and it's similar to what Councillor Davey mentioned. It is very close to the corner. So, there's a concern that, like, there's a stop sign almost immediately. And so people pulling into the drive and then pulling right out onto the road, and people lined up at the stop sign waiting to turn. I guess we need to monitor that. So that's a bit of a,
So we currently service 9 families and 6 children a day. We have not had an issue. I have considered, we have definitely considered that, and it is a concern, because going from 6 to 25 children is a lot. Often we have siblings, so we currently do have siblings, so 1 vehicle for 2 kids. So that's normally fairly common, and we do have current families who are enrolled who are looking for a spot for those siblings. So it might not always be 25 vehicles coming in and out. It could be combined. Like I said, we do have the roundabout, and they will have their allotted times. They have an in and out, and we'll have signage up so they are aware of where to come in and out to avoid any collisions or anything that might
yeah,
happen.
okay, yeah, thank you.
All right, and just to close, I have a couple of questions. I'm fully supportive of what you're asking for, and we'll be voting for the motion when we come out of the public session. But I do have 2 issues that I'd be curious about, and this is because of my experience on county council. And I'm going to get the facts and figures all wrong here. The province or the federal government? The federal government is going for this $10 a day, and I forget how many places we now have in Dufferin County. I think we're still short of what they want us to. Is your daycare center going to be part of that program?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we cannot afford right now to be part of it, but with 25 families, yes. Yeah,
You'd be
that
at
we
the
plan.
$10 a day, okay. Then my second question is, and again, I'm going on memory, and I'm very old and my memory's not good, but at the county level, one of the issues that's come up over the last 2 or 3 years is, yeah, we have so many daycare places, there's a real difficulty in finding people to work in daycare centers. And I'm going on memory, but I think the county has done 2 things. I think they've subsidized or paid for some spots at Georgian College for people to get their 2-year certificate.
Correct.
But also, I think they're offering a $2 an hour subsidy to the wage. I'm sort of,
I can
have
speak
got
to
my
that.
facts right?
Yeah, I can speak to that, yeah.
Yeah, so what I want to know from you is, if you get this all through and you got 25 places now, is there going to be a problem in hiring workers to
We don't need many for 25 children within a family group setting with 3 classrooms. So we're looking at 4-ish staff, 4 to 5 staff, depending on the ages of the kids, based on ratios. So the $2 a day, yes.
$2
so
an
the-
hour.
Or sorry, $2 an hour, yes, for each staff. So finding full-time staff has been difficult for other centers. Again, being in the field, I have a lot of people who are reaching out, people that I've worked with, people that I used to work for Humber College, students, past students. I think because we're a specialized school, a nature-inspired school, I don't suspect that we will have an issue filling those spots.
Great. All right, well, as I said, I'm all for this. Now, I think, unless there's any other comments, yeah, Councillor Manklow.
Thank you. I think this is really a nice thing to have in our community and will be a real asset to us. I think, Chantal, what you've heard from us is a little bit of concerns, and it relates to these things that run on 4 wheels. I think that your parking spaces are going to be used by your permanent staff. Is that right?
Correct. So again, depending on how, like the ages of the kids, we could have as low as 3 staff.
I understand. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so you may have some extra space that somebody can pull into if they're leaving their kid, they want to chat for a minute or something. But you are going to have a number of cars coming there, and you've said that you could schedule them. And it seems to me that that's going to be an important management issue for you, or you're going to have some pushback, I think. This is also an area, as you know, mostly on the weekend, but people with 2 wheels under them like to take off like a bat out of hell. And so it's not that safe an area on the road in my observation. So I think that this is probably quite workable, but I think that the issue here for you is to have a management program which deals adequately with the coming and going of cars. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we're prepared to put that into place. Yeah. And we do slightly do it now. Like parents aren't staying for 20 minutes in the morning because they're going to work. So we don't see congestion with our current situation, but we are prepared to work with that with our families. So it would be a policy that we would put into place that the Ministry of Education would approve. And it is 50, yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that part of the road is 50 kilometers an hour.
I think Councillor
Further up from that corner.
Councillor Davy, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Yes, Chantal, this is all exciting, but I just am hearkening back to when I did have a couple of kids in daycare, and it's not like when they were in public school and you could just almost slow down the vehicle and they would hop out on their own, right? Like daycare, toddlers and infants and the diaper bag and like it requires getting out and getting the kids out. I mean, so they have to stop.
Yes,
So,
with all due respect, that would be the scheduled time. They leave everything on site, so there is nothing that they're grappling to get out of the vehicle. We have cubbies for them, so they leave everything on site. They're just taking their child out of the vehicle, and it's a drop-off. And we communicate via email, phone call, or like I said, where they would have a scheduled time to drop them off. And again, with all due respect, during COVID, parents weren't even allowed in the daycare. So drop-off was quick, and there was no hanging out at the front door because there was another family scheduled 5 minutes after. So we are prepared to put these things, if needed, into place.
All right.
okay, great, thanks.
Any other questions from the public? Seeing none, we do have a couple of letters of support in our package. I'm going to put a motion on the floor to close the statutory public meeting. Is that acceptable? Good. That we close the public meeting and resume the regular meeting of council. I need a mover and a seconder. Come on, Capes, Manklow, thank you. We are now back to our regular meeting, and I have a motion here. Actually, I have, Yes.
Can you just call that vote for the record, please, Deputy Mayor?
the vote, all in favor. Thank you. We're now out of our statutory public meeting. Thank you, Mr. Simpson. So I have a possibility of reading 2 motions here. I'm only going to read one. Okay. Let me get the right one. Whereas council for the town of Mono has held a statutory public meeting under the Planning Act and received and heard from the applicant, the town's director of planning, along with the public, guess we did, that we introduce and give necessary readings to a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 78-1 as amended to change the permitted uses on the east part of Lot 13, Concession 8, East Halton's EHS, to include licensed daycare nursery, that it be signed by the mayor and the clerk, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Now, before we discuss that, I need a mover and a seconder. Mankla moves, Cape seconds. Any discussion of the motion on the floor? Yes.
Why does the word nursery end up in there? Because I didn't see nursery anywhere else. Did I?
Licensed day nursery. Is that the correct use?
That's the definition under our zoning bylaw. So
Okay.
I would call that semantics, perhaps. I mean, that suffices for
Okay.
what we need to do.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
And you all have a copy of the bylaw, the proposed bylaw in your agenda package, so you've read it. Is there any further discussion of the motion on the floor? Hearing none. Anyone opposed to the motion? The motion passes.
Thank you.
I look forward to the ribbon cutting.
Yes, everyone is welcome. Come by anytime. Well, between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m.
I'll park somewhere else.
Monday to
though.
Friday.
I'll park somewhere else,
Yeah.
or walk, or ride my bike or something.
Okay, thanks very much. We have another delegation at 11 o'clock, so
Good luck with the Ministry of Education.
Thank you.
I'll discuss with my wife the possibility of us having children so I can put one of them in your day. Why are you? Why? Okay, so we have 20 minutes and we can get some council business done before our next delegation. Thank you, Mr. Trotman, for your excellent report. The next, skipping down to item 5, number 1, we have unfinished business. Does anyone on council, I've got to find it on my agenda package here. Does anyone on council have any comments on it? Yes, Councillor Capes.
Thank you. Yes, I would just like to report on behalf of the working group for purchasing property in Mono that will come to the April 23rd council meeting. I'm making a bold statement.
Good.
Also, I want to talk about number 14, item 14, firearms bylaw report. It says Q1, recommend public engagement process. And is that something that's coming from the clerk's office to recommend this? Or is there something coming with a date that we're doing this? I just wasn't quite sure.
What item was that?
Number 14, firearms bylaw report,
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Why can't I find it?
because it's not in order.
Oh, there it is. I found
There
it,
you go.
yes.
Fifth one down.
Yeah, I found it. Mr. Simpson, can you respond to that?
Oh, so I don't have a date yet, but we are working diligently to get that before council as soon as we can practically get it in front of you.
So the public engagement part is that we'll have a statutory public meeting on this?
Not a statutory public meeting.
No.
Because there's no
There's no
statutory
statutory
requirement.
reason, but-
So similar to the last bylaw, the intent will be to bring a draft bylaw so that there's a starting point for the discussion. Council then discusses it. We've had broad requests to participate in the process. So I will be recommending to council to hold some sort of open house or public information session, either within council or separate. That'll be up to council to decide.
Okay.
So that's what council's waiting on, is that first draft and some suggestions on where to go from there.
Okay, thank you very much. And the other one is number 10, the kite fighting bylaw. When does the public comment period end?
So we haven't got that onto the website yet, so that'll be going up onto the website, and I think a minimum of 30 days to allow the public to comment. It'll somewhat depend on our other communication channels to make sure we don't end it just before we send something out that we could have advertised it in. So the exact timeline's not yet determined.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Does anyone on council have any other comments on unfinished business? All right, maybe we can move on. I don't have a motion for that. The next is this new Drinking Water Quality Management Standard Annual Report. Mr. Dunmore, did you want to say anything about that? The report is fairly self-explanatory.
Self-explanatory, Deputy Mayor Nix, and sort of mimicking what it was last year, and there was some comments on the internal and external reports, but generally everything's being assessed and dealt with as we move forward. And it's a communication tool for council of a year in review.
Does anyone on council have any questions about this report? It more or less repeats everything we've seen in the more detailed reports, but yes, Councillor Capes.
So just some, very small questions. On page 7, it says that there was a management review in October, but the minutes were not yet available. So I wasn't sure about turnaround time on minutes. That seems like an awfully long time.
Page 7? I only got 4 pages in the report.
No,
Page 7 of the internal.
yes, of the,
So I believe that was definitely flagged as an opportunity for improvement.
it was, yeah.
Orangeville and their clerical definitely have been it's the operating authority that does the minutes for their meetings, and they're definitely, it has been identified as an opportunity for improvement, and they're definitely working towards that.
Yeah, it just seemed like that's a shame. Minutes should be available right away. But the emergency contact, it mentions throughout the report, page 9, that it was different. But did it have all the correct contacts on it? Like if something had happened, would somebody have been able to have made the appropriate emergency contact? Like, I
So
know
the
it's-
operator in training, and that is all, this is all private information to internal sources. I believe, I'm sorry, I'm not finding where you're asking, Councillor Capes.
page
But the
9.
emergency contacts are internal to myself, Matt Donor, the operator-in-chief in Orangeville, and we definitely know the directors and the appropriate numbers. So the updating of the contacts is an annual event that can fall out of sync depending on staff changes
okay.
or movements, yes.
Right, I just thought, well, that's kind of a interesting comment. There is further in this report, I can find this auditor's report quite, I don't know, not very well organized as a document for an auditor, but anyway.
Thank you.
So, on page 5, it talks about the Ultima gas monitor, February calibration not being done. However, in the summary, it doesn't say that there was an NCR, but that's listed as an NCR. So they're not consistent.
The report prepared by Strategies for the Environment is in a different form that was always done by Pat Becker, who had done our, so council's seeing a different auditor for sure. With respect to the non-conformance, I think it was identified that this was a carbon monoxide detector in the Island Lake,
Right.
or sorry, Coles Tower, where there used to be a gas-fired generator, and no longer do we have that generator causing the problem. So it was missed. So it was definitely identified as not calibrated and not tested, but whether it had any impact to the operations was probably why it was left out of the non-conformity.
Okay, because in the detail, it says it's an NCR number 1, and then in the summary, there's no NCRs. So that's an
Right.
inconsistency in their audit reporting.
We still consider it, and we dig into the details, not the summary. So
Right,
we
okay.
still consider it a non-conformity, and I believe it's been removed from the
Yeah.
structure or
Okay.
calibrated if it's required.
All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Anybody else on council have a question on this report? No. Okay, I have a motion that council for the town of Mono receive the 2023 Drinking Water Quality Management Standard Annual Review. Do I have a mover? Manklow? Do I have a seconder? Davy? Anyone opposed? None? That motion passes. Now, we have 10 minutes to go. We have Bridge 5. I think we've got time to deal with Bridge 5, that very expensive bridge. Let me just find it in my agenda package. If you, Matt, if you would like to speak to this report, I'm still looking for it, but I've read it. Just go ahead and start talking about why this bridge is going to be done.
Thanks,
and why
Deputy
it's so
Mayor Nix.
expensive, and where's the money going to come from?
That's part of the reason why this report's coming to council. As council's aware, Bridge 5's been coming to council since about 2017. It's been a need that's been flagged since even probably before then with our 10-year plans as they evolve with the town engineer. It takes into account conversations that have happened over the years at council with concerns about, comments about replacing it, and uncertainty potentially with replacing it. I think this memo is an important step in making a decision on the structure and the commitment for the type of structure and the proposed alignment, realignment and widening, and just doing an overall improvement. I think that the proposed design is the most economical solution, and it'll give us a long-term solution as well for keeping this road open. So happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, thank you, Matt. So the motion we're going to put on the floor in a few minutes is just to proceed with the design. Actually, I guess I should put the motion on the floor and then we can discuss the report. Let me put the motion on the floor. That we direct staff to finalize the design, obtain permits, and complete the required studies to replace Bridge 5 and improve the road width and alignment. Do I have a mover for that motion? Capes, and seconded by Manklow. Now we can discuss the motion and Matt's report. Anyone have any questions? Yes, Councillor Manklow.
Thanks, Matt. I'm pleased to see this, you're moving ahead with the ideas, whether we agree to pay for it, I don't know. But it's important that we don't lose sight of it. I have two questions, and I'll ask them one at a time. The first question is, just a little explanation. Could you flesh out the statement that closing the bridge will incur road and slope maintenance costs and due to limited accessibility? I'm trying to understand why it's going to cost more to maintain the road because you can't go over the bridge. And it's probably very obvious to you, but not to me.
Thanks, Councillor Manklow. Yeah, so if we were to close the road, we would have to do it at locations that would not landlock some properties. So, because of the topography in the area, currently the road's closed at the top of the hill on the south side, as well as the north side, just south of Singing Waters. So that stretch of road beyond there would still need to be maintained in such a way that it's gonna incur significant erosion if we don't pay attention to it. All the road's gonna end up in the river, slope erosion and things of that nature. So it'll be very difficult to maintain that stretch from the bridge to those road closures over the years, moving forward, if we don't have a through passageway there, and there's no place to turn around down there. So if it was just to be simply closed there, that stretch of road will end up down in the river, essentially.
So there are residents which are in between the height of the land on the north and the south side.
Yes.
Okay. And so the problem is a lack of a turnaround.
Yeah.
For your big
Yes.
equipment.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. All right. My second question is, I'm trying to visualize the bridge. It's a neat site, it's a lovely bridge there we have there right now, but I'm trying to visualize what we're going to get. And you've mentioned it and described it as a corrugated steel multi-plate arch culvert.
Yeah.
Could you just flesh that out a little bit with the cast-in-place concrete footings? What would that look like?
Yeah, so it'd be very similar to the existing structure. The existing structure's a rigid frame spandrel arch, so it's just a concrete barrel. The new one would be, the proposed structure would be concrete cast-in-place footings perched up behind the existing, and then it would have multi-plate, which is like a corrugated steel plates all bolted together into an arch. And then it's considered a soil structure, so it relies on the soil to carry the loads throughout the structure. A similar one would be Bridge 4, which is directly south of it, just north of Hockley Road, as you enter onto here Ontario Street. We replaced it in 2007, I believe, 2008, and it was a similar type structure. And yeah, so if you for comparison's sake,
Trying to think of it.
So I very much trust your engineering judgment, but why are you choosing that particular style of bridge?
As you know, the area is very difficult to get to. Concrete is expensive. Everything is becoming more and more expensive. You know, we have the fill in the area. We've done some geotechnical work already there and drilled some boreholes and taken soil samples. We're able to reuse a lot of the soil that's in gravel that's in the area as part of the backfill. So I would say cost, access to the site are two key reasons. And, you know, like a concrete structure would be significantly higher. The materials and that have just skyrocketed, so has a lot to do with it.
You mean by preformed?
Precast and cast in place, either or. It's expensive. Labor costs, you know, cost of material has definitely played a role in those things. So this would be a fairly easy type of structure to construct. So you'd have a multitude of contractors of, you wouldn't be just limited to a concrete contractor, a traditional bridge building contractor. And yeah, getting concrete trucks down there, pump trucks and all those things are very difficult to get down in that area. So that's part of the reason. It would kind of resemble the existing structure with the exception of it being steel. There would be some we're still working through the design obviously, and but there would be some potential for widening it in the future should we want to extend it. So there's some flexibility there too.
Are you looking at a single or a double lane bridge?
Well, currently it's a single. Development charges would apply to it if we widened it. I noted that in the report. So the idea would be to try to get as wide as we possibly can within the existing alignment, current alignment, trying to improve the alignment because from a safety perspective. But yeah, try to get as much as we can. We don't really know that yet because we haven't taken the time to spend the money yet on the finalizing the design. We wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page, and that's part of the reason why this report it's asking for that. So I'll know more about that closer to budget time and throughout the summer months.
So we're being asked to give staff a direction to finalize the design and obtain permits, et cetera. What's the expense going to be for that?
Well, the NEC, this is within the NEC, so there'll be costs associated with submitting to the NEC. There's cultural heritage studies, which we've already started. You know, we're probably, for finalizing design, and all the permitting, we're probably looking at another $50,000 to get all this stuff.
So
yeah, so it's not, it's significant costs. Geotechnical costs, which has already been done, we're in the ballpark about $22,000 for the geotechnical boreholes and investigations. And we're just at a point here where we want to make sure that we're going to be approved in the fall to replace the structure.
All right, I'm going to call a stop to this conversation. We haven't finished this item, but it is now 11 o'clock, and we're going to come back to you, Matt, and thanks for your questions, Councillor Mancaloni. You can ask some more when we come back. but we have a delegation at 11 o'clock, and we have Mr. McKay in the audience, so I would ask you to come forward and do your sorry, Ralph, are you okay with that? Is everyone on council okay with that? We'll come back to this item. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Councilors online, nice to meet you and see you again. There we are. Perfect. Thank you very much. Oh, I don't like the way that cut off there. Okay. As always, thank you for the invitation. Deputy Mayor, did you have any questions that you wanted to start off with, or would you like me to just begin?
No, I'd like you to do your presentation, and then I have some questions, and I think other councilors will too. Maybe.
Very well.
Okay.
Perfect. So we're here to discuss the performance report for the Corporation of the Town of Mono, year ending December 2023, and a comment on update of 2024 if you wish. So we have, perfect. For those of you who don't know me, most of you do, again, thank you for the invitation. My name is Will McKay, Investment Advisor and Portfolio Manager with CIBC Wood Gundy. That is my team, has grown by one since I was here last time. Again, Michaela has joined us. But very large and established team, one of the largest teams in Mississauga that we have. We have a very large wealth management program that includes our municipal accounts. And again, I'll just briefly move through those. This is probably the most important thing that we want to talk about right now is path of current interest rates. You can see 2020 in the depths of COVID, they were the lowest they had been. We have seen them increase now on the historical. We're up. This is a 10-year government bond rate. It's more relevant to the municipal account that's in here. We're about 3.5% is where we're staring at the 10-year. So right now we're thinking interest rates are around 5%. That's accurate in that. But when we take a 10-year sort of trend on this one, we're about 3.5. And the forecast is really where we spend a little bit more time. This is the forecast. You can see it's come off in the last couple of months. We've dropped down. This is because we've seen inflation slowing down. Now, slowing inflation, I always talk about, is not decreasing prices. It's just the pace of those prices slowing down. I hear my colleague Matt talking about increased prices. Of course, that is here to almost stay. It is. But what we do see is we see a little tail off in the end there where the expectation is interest rates will come down. It's a question of when, not if. They have been pushed out significantly further. This aligns with our personal team perspective. If we spent 2.5 years with subpar interest rates during COVID, we will spend an equal amount of 2.5 years above average before we can sort of get into that. And that's just our reasoning for the length that we're going to be here. Interest rates in Canada are likely to fall a little bit faster than the United States. The US gets a lot more coverage than Canada, but I think that's relevant to note. And I think it's going to drop in interest rates in Canada are likely to align with mortgage rates when mortgages when they roll over. Everybody who bought a house during COVID, your mortgages are going to roll over in 25 and 26. That's going to be substantial. We'll briefly talk here about performance. I like to move to the far right since inception. While 2.4% doesn't sound like a substantial amount of return, it is a full 1% above the average during that time. One of the things we would, really like to highlight that over the last 10 years almost, we have consistently outpaced our benchmark on here. This is our close work I've done with my treasurer friend Les over the period of time, and his previous colleague Mark as well. The last year, the 1 year, we've slightly underperformed our benchmark. The reason for that is we haven't had the ability to reinvest any of our funds. They've been used by council for a variety of different reasons. That's fine, we've taken them out. Therefore, we haven't been able to pick up a lot of those higher rates when they've come in, and I'll just talk about that a little bit further. Against our municipal counterpart, the one investment program, you can see over the last 5-year program, we've almost 2.5 times their total rate of return when it comes in, and I think this is really relevant when you look how we've been able to increase the overall return. If there's no questions about that, I'll step on one more part. Year to date, We are up approximately 1.2%, but you'll notice our bond index is flat and slightly down, and that is that pace of interest rate increases has been pushed out. Last year, they thought it was going to be September, then March. Now we're heading into mid-April, and there hasn't been sort of a really whiff of a conversation about that yet. So it's pushed out to June, July, could be September in that. So I think it's important to note that we still have the opportunity to garner some of these long-term high interest rates, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Right here, we have the current allocation of the account just by maturity date. You can see we have 46% of the account coming in 2024. And the reason for that is we haven't been able to push out our maturities from those because we've had a lot of the maturities just come due naturally. So Les and I have been speaking about maintaining a healthy liquid position, knowing just council has a lot of things to spend on at this moment.
Can I ask a question
Of
now,
course.
if you don't mind? And I'm not a financial advisor. We all think interest rates are going to be going down sometime June or the fall.
Correct.
Wouldn't this be the time to lengthen your terms of maturity, like to lock in? I mean, you have so much coming due this year.
Correct.
So shouldn't we?
We will talk about that. I have that on to comment on.
Okay.
And it's really about how much funds does council require over the near term will allow us to extend those maturities out. That's really an important part when it comes to it. So we'll talk next just right here. Weighted modified duration. Duration is what is the overall length when we average out essentially in terms of the portfolio. It's about 1.24 years, which means we have a very healthy liquid balance that's in here, but we do want to talk about council's need for funds over the short and near term so that we can extend some of those maturities out. Weighted average yield to maturity that we have is approximately 4.9%. We have a few investments in the account that pay at the end, so we can't include those in the calculation at the moment. This is just fixed yield paying at this moment. This has been the same as last year. So even though our duration has come down a little bit, the yield is essentially the same. So we've been able to maintain that current earn. This I always like to talk about in here. This is a principal protected note that we used in here. This has allowed us to increase the overall performance of the account. And we've done this a variety of different times. In 2016, I've talked to the top here, we established a position with the CIBC Financials PPN of 1.365 million. And in 2021, in conjunction with my partner Les, we liquidated that and took our profit and rolled it into a new issue that came in there. With the current underlying that we have, it's slated to be called in the next 3 weeks. We're likely to get our full 13% return off of that, which is a good annualized rate of return compared to what we could have gotten in 2021. And that is what has helped us done it, and that will give us, all things being equal, if it's called and nothing happens between now and the 28th, a total return of $612,000 over the life of that investment. And I think that's really important. We've earned approximately $2.4 million over the length of that return. These type of products have added a substantial amount of doing it without putting any principal at risk at that important time. And we are active in this portfolio. We don't just buy and hold where it is. When appropriate, we will hold to keep costs down, which is why we bill on a transactional basis and not a asset management basis like typical. So this is where we've generated a significant amount of what we call alpha or extra performance over and above the benchmark. That's a part. Secondly, we do talk here bond funds, bond versus bond funds, and it's just why do we prefer holding individual pieces versus a pooled program? It gives us predictability. We can choose which pieces that we can manage. Just like a grocery store, I always say you don't walk into the grocery store and peel everything off the shelf. You pick and choose what you want based on the cost of what it is and the quality of what you're looking for. And we operate within the parameters of the Act itself. Cost efficiency allows us to keep the cost down. As we rolled over almost nothing in the last year, there's been nominal fees accrued to the account. And then the last one is flexibility. We have the ability to choose what investments we want to exit at what time to be able to do that, to ensure that we have the highest degree of flexibility that comes to it. Deputy Mayor, just on the next page, this will speak to you in what we have coming due over the next 5 months.
A lot.
We have a significant amount of assets coming due in the next 5 months. We have the opportunity to roll those over as they come to extend that duration and garner some of these higher interest rates, which are still in the 4+ range, to do it. But we do need to know what the liquidity requirements over the next few years for capital replacement or improvement that council would like to do, so that we can just effectively manage that ladder. That would be the end, where I say,
Okay,
any
so
questions?
thank you for that. Now, I have a question, but remember, this is just a naive question, and I'm asking you and Les this question. We haven't made any decisions. You were here, you heard part of the discussion that we deferred until your presentation was over. It's on Bridge 5.
Correct.
I know we haven't done all the design work yet, so we don't know the cost, but the last time, I think our Director of Public Works mentioned it to me, was gonna be in the range of 1.2 million or something like that. That was before we get all the design work done. To get into our budget this year to make it acceptable to our ratepayers, we initially were going to put into our bridge reserve $1.3 million, but we cut that right out. So by the end of this year, our bridge reserve is only going to have $80,000 in it. So what I'm thinking, and again, this isn't so much a question for you, but you asked what our liquidity requirements are. We're going into 2025. We know because of bridge inspections, we have to replace that Bridge 5. We haven't got all the design work done, but it's going to be in the range of 1.2 billion. So when we do our 2025 budget, we on council, we're going to have a problem, because boy, that's a lot of money to put into the 2025 year, budget. That's a lot of money. One thought I've had, and I'm looking at Les for guidance here, is maybe we could spread that cost of that bridge out over 2 or 3 years, 4, by borrowing. You've got about $11 million of our money under management.
Accurate.
Yeah. Maybe we could borrow $1 million for a few years. Now, if we did that, Les, don't smile, okay? I'm not a financial guy. I'm just saying, rather than going to our 2025 budget year and tell our ratepayers, here, 1.25 million, whatever it is, we got to redo a bridge. Maybe we go in with $400,000 a year for 3 years by borrowing some money that you're managing for us. I'm sort of putting that out there as a question to both you and Les. Is it possible? If we did that, we'd have to pay the reserves back an interest rate. I don't know what interest rate we'd charge, but is that any of this feasible, Les? Could we do this?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, next. We have done it in the past, if you
Yes.
recall,
Yes.
when we replaced all the street lights.
I forgot the incident, but yes.
We had borrowed from a reserve because the streetlight reserve didn't have enough funding. So it has been done in the past. And as far as interest rate goes, we'd have to basically establish the go-in, whatever the rate is, in the regular marketplace. So it's not like we're going to get a deal on our interest rate, but at least we're paying ourselves.
Last
from
year,
our
we earned 5.5% on what you're doing for us, so I assume the interest we should pay should be something comparable to what you've been earning for us, right?
It would likely be that or a little bit less if interest rates stay exactly the way they are. So when we look at ourselves, when we look at capital replacement planning, there's 2 ways you can look at it. You can look at it, is that cost something that we're bringing forward in the budget? Like, was that bridge slated to be done at a later date and we're just forward dating that? Or if it's a brand new cost, that's not included in the budget. So there's only 1 or 2 ways to pay for it. You actually take it directly from the holdings that you have, which something else was earmarked for, and pay it back later, or you put it in the budget and bring up the cost, through the taxes to be able to do it. The reason is when you do long-term capital replacement planning, everything in there has a cost associated with it, and that's the balance of the account that's slated. And if it's not included in there, you're going to be using those funds that were, let's call it, earmarked in the future for something else, and then you're going to have to replace those funds at a later date through higher taxation to be able to do it. So that's really the only way to get extra funds inside there is to actually put extra funds in there, or try and earn a better rate of return. But that's,
I think I'm following you. I mean, part of my question sort of also, you have to sort of say, and what are our capital plans for 2026 and 2027? What I'm hoping is if we have a slow year in 2 or 3 years from now, that we could spread that $1.2 million over a few years. But it's just a thought from a non-financial guy. Will asked, can I call you Will?
absolutely.
He did ask the question, you know, what are our liquidity requirements for next year? I don't know if you have to ask council to figure this out, or whether you and Will can talk about this, but it does occur to me, by the way, the bridge has to be replaced. We have them inspected, what, Matt, every 2 years? And when you have the engineers telling us that's the end of the useful life for that asset, we either have to close the bridge or replace it.
Yeah, in my role here is never to advise on what to spend the money
No,
on, just
no.
the implication of what happens when it is spent.
Okay, and so I'm just asking if you and Les can possibly think of this, and before we always do our capital budget first before we get into our big budget. Maybe we can work this out by early fall and see. But in the meantime, Will kind of has to know, or maybe I think you have to know, of all this money that's coming to maturity in 2024, I mean, if you've got to, well, I think maybe we've got to stay a bit liquid until we figure my question out.
In the short term, that's easily done,
Okay.
as we just let them naturally expire throughout the course of the next few months. What I do like to talk about is we haven't seen interest rates like this in 15 years. We can see right now that the portfolio itself over the last year has generated over $600,000 in return, which is 27% of the overall almost 10-year return. So we can see the beneficial impact of high interest rates at this moment, and the ability to earn off of that larger base spits off essentially an endowment that continues to go there. The more we take out the capital of that, the less likely it is to earn that consistent rate of return.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, anyone else on council have questions for Mr. McKay? Oh, Councillor Manklow.
Good morning.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, Will. I understand most of what you're saying. Like Fred, I'm not an expert. Could you give me a Cole's Notes version of what is a principal protected note?
Absolutely. It is it's a deposit instrument purchased from the bank. It has a guaranteed principal. So if you put in $100, your principal is guaranteed. The return is variable. And the return is based off underlying metrics. This one here was the Canadian banks, which we had purchased at the time. And if the Canadian banks produce a positive rate of return, we get our 13% rate of return, which it comes in. Therefore, we'll exit at the first opportunity with our 13% rate of return.
Okay.
Good question, Ralph.
I have a comment about, and it's right on the same subject as Deputy Mayor Nix is talking about, and that is, I think we're getting into a new era in terms of municipal funding. We've been very, very fortunate for decades in not going into debt, and I think keeping our infrastructure up and maintaining the town as it should be. Last year, we had a request from council for about $3 million more than we were able to go for. This is items that request from staff. So this is items that staff felt were necessary to maintain our infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this is going to be going on in the future. We may be getting into a time where we're looking at something different than we have in the way of how we're going to pay for things. So that's just that's such a bizarre comment that without any particular focus and answers. But I think we need to be careful about what we do if we tie money up too much.
Yes, I do understand your comment about that. And if I could just add to a colleague Matt here when he spoke about the cost of the materials increase. For example, we deal a lot with engineers and other construction companies. The cost of roof tar has gone up 100%. So we have seen a substantial jump in the cost allocated to all projects across the entire spectrum. And it has been anywhere from 20 to 50% straight across the board. So from a funding perspective, a lot of the things that have been earmarked down in the future are just going to cost more. And that's an unfortunate reality, is those costs are not coming down.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on council? Councillor Capes?
Thank you very much. Your presentation, as I said last year, is much better than reading this. But I do want to look at that principal protected note and ask, is there more room for us to take advantage of that investment tool?
We have slated only a 20% allocation to those, so we have more than one in there. This is the one example that we have given. So from a liquidity perspective, they are best held until maturity.
Right.
Therefore, we only tie up approximately 20% in our long-term allocation to that for two reasons. One is if we chose to exit, we would like to take liquidity from the other areas of the portfolio. And number two is because the return is variable, we want to be ensured that we get the maximum amount of guaranteed interest out of the 80%. And if we can cover, let's call it essentially our benchmark out of that 80%, the other 20% becomes extra.
Right.
And that's where we add to that. But if we didn't get that return, it wouldn't impact the long-term rate of return of the original part of the portfolio by being able to meet our return obligations. So long story short, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't? Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Councillor Davy, did you have any questions?
No, thanks. It's all fairly clear to me. No, thanks though.
Why is
Thank
she
you.
wearing a coat in California? Never mind. So if there's no further, any further questions from council, from a very excellent presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
Not for myself.
Okay, thank
As
you.
always, thank you for the invitation.
All right, well, thanks for coming up. Nope, I have a motion. Nope, I don't have a motion.
Mid-conversation on Bridge 5.
I know, but don't we have a motion to receive the?
No, there is no motion. We haven't typically given a motion to, for this delegation. It's for
Okay,
information.
then we will return to the Bridge 5 reconstruction, and Ralph has asked some questions. You can probably guess where I'm going to be asking questions, but before I do, Councillor Davy or Councillor Capes, do you have any questions to Matt about the Bridge 5 reconstruction? Oh, Councillor Manknell still has some. Go ahead, Ralph.
I don't need to continue now, but I do have one question. It's just about around financing. Mr. Donor has indicated that the costs of coming up with a report in time for next budget would be about $50,000,
Yeah.
as I understand. And where will this money be coming from? I don't think it's in the budget.
Oh, good
Maybe
question.
Thanks, Councillor Mainkelo. So in 2023, council approved $100,000 for Bridge 5 for design and investigations and whatnot. I spoke with Les a couple weeks ago, and as Deputy Mayor Nix had noted earlier in the previous, we do have some reserves left in the bridge reserve. So we'll be utilizing those funds to finalize the design.
Okay, Ralph?
That's fine, thanks.
I think Councillor Capes has some questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for asking that cost question. And I did just pie in the sky, and I'm not going to hold you to this, but what's your best case scenario for what this could cost, this new bridge?
It's very difficult.
A range.
Probably 1.2 to 1.5, because I believe we were in that range, depending on what we could do for widening and alignment. We're trying to get the best possible structure in there that's going to give us the best possible solution for the money that we want to allocate to it. I'll know more, and I could probably provide some verbal updates as we kind of progress through here, hopefully before the fall. But yeah, I would say 1.2 to 1.5 range.
Yep, thank
Yep.
you.
Thanks, that's one of the questions I was going to ask too. Counselor, are you finished, Counselor Capes?
Yes, thank you very
Counselor
much.
Davy, do you have any questions on Bridge 5?
No, I'm clear, waiting, keen to hear, keen to get the further information, that's all.
Okay, I, to be honest, Matt, my questions, they've sort of been discussed already. My concern is, I know we have to do the bridge in 2025. Elaine has asked you ballpark what the cost is gonna be. We really won't know the final answer until the design is done, we put it out for tender. But what I'm looking at you and Les about is when that cost comes in and we're doing the 2025 budget, is there a possibility that we don't put all that cost into 2025? Could we spread it over a year or two? That's, if you want to answer it now, you can, but that's my concern.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor Nix. I think that's definitely a conversation that Les and I have had already, and we will continue to have, and we'll revisit it once we have a final engineering estimate, and then when we go to work, start to work on the capital budget.
And you know, in my simple-minded view, because I did phone that provincial agency that loans money to municipalities, but that was 3 or 4 years ago. At that time, we could have got a mortgage-type loan for around 1%. I don't know what the cost is up to now, Les, but I hear Will giving us, we've got $11 million there, and last year we earned 5.5% on it. So one of the things I keep thinking is, would it be better to go to that provincial agency and borrow some money for a couple of years? Or would it be better to take some money away from Will? And, you know, he's earning all that great money for us, but that's sort of the trade-off we have to make. Either borrow some money and pay the interest, or reduce the amount of money we've got with CIBC.
If we go external to borrow the money, we'll be at a fixed term. That would,
Yes.
like, and then we have to basically make those payments over that term. Whereas with our own funds, we could pay it off sooner as money comes up. So you're right, then with that chance, we have 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the other capital funding is anywhere from 10 to 15. So now you're tied for that length of time.
Okay. All right, I think that finishes item for Bridge 5, unless anyone else has any further comments. Do I have a motion on this? Oh, I already put the motion on the floor, didn't I?
Yes.
So, you know, the motion on the floor is that we direct staff to finalize the design, obtain permits, and complete the required studies to replace Bridge 5 and improve the road width and alignment. Anyone opposed to that motion? It's been moved and seconded. That motion passes. Now we go to Schedule A. I was going to call for a recess because I'm getting very tired, but, well,
Done.
you want a recess? Or you want to just try to finish?
Plow through.
Okay, let's keep going. Schedule 5, did we have any items pulled, Mr. Simpson?
I apologize, I wasn't in the office yesterday. I do not believe, though, if I'm wrong, by all means point it out, that there was any direct requests for items.
I told you I didn't have any, although there's a couple that really interest me, but I'm not pulling them. Oh, Councillor Manktolo has, and Councillor Capes have. Go ahead, Ralph. Ralph, you might turn your sound on.
How's that now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm sorry, I wasn't on top of this Schedule A, but I wanted to pull item 8, the Tri-County Green Development Standard Municipal Info Session.
All right, Mr. Simpson, I can speak to that a little bit. I was going to go to the meeting. We're dealing with this at the county level with 2 other counties. I think it's tremendously important, these green standards, but I have no idea what they're actually thinking of. I couldn't attend the meeting because we had our council meeting in the evening when that was held. I will keep on top of this item at the county, but other than that first public meeting they had, Ralph, I have no idea where we're going with this. I think, Mr. Dunmore, that this actually is part of, or could be part of, related to our climate action plan, in the sense that some of these green development standards, not all, but some of them do relate to, or could relate to climate change. The simplest example I can think of is you put, when you build a home, you have to build it to the Ontario Building Code. We have the power to go beyond that. And we could say here in Dufferin, Wellington, and Gray that when you build a home, you build it to the Ontario Building Code, and by the way, you put a 220-volt wire into the garage for that house, so that if you get an electric vehicle someday, you've got the wiring there to do it. I mean, it could be as simple as that, Ralph. But anyway, maybe I've talked enough. Does anyone on staff, Dave, do you want to talk to this item?
I was at the online webinar this past, I think it was March 22nd. My notes are correct? Yes, it was. And there was a fulsome group there online weighing in on this. It was a first presentation by, I believe it was Sarah McCrae, who's our manager of climate and energy. And the slide deck was presented. We got that item later on subsequent, and they're going to have a repeat or a follow-up meeting, I guess, in the next little while. I don't know if I've got a date yet at this point, Deputy Mayor Nix, but I'm expecting to see another email as an online invite probably a couple of weeks or so, give or take. From that point in which I can do a summary for council, and that may inform our climate change initiatives.
Mr. Dunmore?
That's great. I'm glad that Dave could get there. As council will recall, these items were identified in our community action plan, that staff would work with the planning department to look at our official plans, work with the county on their building code advancements and above and beyond. They provide the timeline that they're working through this during 2024. This is great from a Mono perspective. Let's let the county roll on this. Our Mono Climate Action Team, while we want to work with the county, they are requesting our input on this. But this is a great example of us collaborating with the county. They got the funding. They're working the funding, and it lightens the load for Mono with respect to this action.
Councillor Capes, yes.
So through you to Mr. Trotman, were you at the public meeting for this? The engagement meeting?
No, I was at the staff online meeting.
Okay, so thank you. So what I heard was that there was quite a divisive response to this presentation, and it actually broke into 2 separate meetings because it was so disrupted that people felt they weren't being heard. They felt that government was trying to tell them again what they had to do, and so it was divided. They went to Sarah's group, and people who wanted to participate in that meeting went to a separate room, and the other group of people stayed in another room. So there is some, I guess, anxiety around what this might be bringing forward. So I just share that with you because I heard about that.
That's very interesting. My guess is that the split will be between the development community, the builders, because probably these standards will increase the cost of building a house.
These were not developers.
They weren't? Oh, okay.
They were citizens, but Mike has something to add.
Yes, Mr. Dunmore.
I think this is definitely something, like we're hearing about it today, we're as a council, we're looking to figure out how we can afford a bridge, and there's 2 ways, is to borrow or raise the levy. And that levy is the trigger that is affecting the feeling of people. And I think that, I'm assuming that at this meeting, the mandatory building code updates with respect to EV chargers and solar panel roof tiles and the items that will come out, gray water recycling, the items that come out of the green development standards will make that starter home one step further away for people. And I think that's something that we have to look at as well as climate poverty, and we need to be very conscious when we know we have a climate emergency. And that's why I hope the county in this initiative, and I know in speaking with Sarah Wicks, is they're looking to source as much funding that could be put back to residents should they want to implement green development standards. And I know the county was working on these bylaws that loans with respect to implementation of the green development standards. And I think that that's something that the world, quite frankly, is being challenged with right now, is we know what's right. We should do it tomorrow, but can we afford it, I think is one of the biggest problems.
All right, Councillor Mankslow, did you want anything more on item number 8?
Well, actually, I haven't spoken about it yet.
Okay, then speak.
You went right on past me.
You're right, I did.
No, so the reason I asked to have this on was really for one thing, and that was to assert the need for what I suggest is probably better communication, because I didn't know about the municipal workshop, and I see a whole pile of things under how are we working with the community here, municipal workshops, developer workshops, public surveys, public workshops, et cetera. So I'm not sure what's the venue which information is coming out, but I guess it's probably through you, Deputy Mayor, as you're still on county council, so that as you hear about things that are happening, even if it means double noticing us, you should please send us on information so that we know what's happening. But this is certainly a very important issue at this juncture in our communities, and it all has a lot of repercussions, as CAO Dunmore has just said. It may have financial repercussions that are significant. So I think communication is really important. I'd like to be sure that we all are hearing what's going on here in the future.
I agree with you, and I know you've asked me in the past to keep council more informed as to what's going on at the county level. I'll take the blame for that. I'll try to do better in the future. Does anyone else have any comments on item number 8?
I agree, there can be better communication, but I actually registered for this and then couldn't go because we had our council meeting in that evening. So it got to me somehow, and I'm not quite sure, but I did register for it. So I got some communication, but you're right, we can always do better.
All right, any other items on Schedule A? Yes, Councillor Capes.
So item number 4, and I did not formally ask to have these reviewed, but the CRDC minutes, I wanted to understand what does it mean when it says we have a need for a poly? What's a poly?
Policy.
A poly. Oh, is a poly is a policy. Okay. Okay, nice. Excellent. I'm glad we use short form so people don't know what we're talking about. Number 10, I would like to support this, like just a general support of that motion for home heating by Brantford. So just a general support motion for that.
No, well, all right. Are you putting a motion on the floor? I can't support this.
You can't support this?
No?
Deputy Mayor?
Oh, yeah, sorry, Councillor Mankslow.
Elaine, I appreciate what you're saying. I find this a bit, it's going to and froing in different directions here. One of the issues is that's requesting that the carbon tax not be applied to home heating. And I think it's probably a little bit misinformed because the carbon tax rebate, pretty well, it's at least as much as you lose on your expenses. So I'm not sure that this motion is based on good information. So I'm a little reluctant to support it for that reason.
In any case, Councillor Capes, are you, okay, what, you're asking us to support this?
Yeah.
Is, Mr. Simpson, does that have to be a motion? Councillor Capes would like us to support this motion?
If council wishes, that needs to be put on the floor as a motion and follow the normal procedure in order for council to support that.
Right.
As a council, as opposed to an individual.
Right.
Are you putting a motion forth?
I'll put the motion out there then.
Do we have a seconder for Councillor Capes' motion? Yes, Mr. Simpson.
We actually just get a motion? I haven't prepared a motion for this.
So the motion is to provide council's general support of this motion from Brantford.
So that we support and endorse the resolution from the City of Brantford regarding home heating sustainability.
Thank you very much.
Let me just read it again. I don't mind the rebate part, but didn't they say to take the carbon tax off home heating oil? Okay. First of all, we need a seconder for that motion. Councillor Manklow or Councillor Davy, are you going to second Councillor Capes' motion? No.
Nope.
No, and I'm not seconding it.
There you
Having
go.
no seconder, there's no motion on the floor. Does anyone else have any items on Schedule A that they want to talk about? Hearing none. Hearing none. I have a motion that we accept Schedule A to this agenda. Do I have a mover? Councillor Manklow, Councillor Davy. Anyone opposed? That motion passes. Where am I? Reports of members and council staff. Okay. Let me start with staff. Les, I'll start at the end of the table. Do you have any reports?
This week, we have our financial auditors in, and the plan is for them to complete the in-office part of the audit this Thursday. And of course, once they go back to the office, they continue to ask us questions, and we provide them information. But that's what's happening in Treasury this week.
Matt, do you have anything to report?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Nix. Just briefly, we closed the Public Works Manager posting last Friday, so we're going to be hopefully doing interviews, probably not next week, the week after. We'll look to get that sorted out. Public Works we'll be starting with street sweeping next week and grading throughout the town. So spring grading and whatnot will be taking place. We have a couple tenders that closed over the last couple weeks that we'll also be bringing to council, probably not next week or next council, but the council after. And yeah, just continue on moving here, so.
Thank you. Any questions of Matt? Okay, Mr. Trotman, do you have anything to report?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Next, quickly, we have the backyard chickens matter is a policy matter and potential zoning bylaw amendment matter coming to our good planning committee on April 25th. And I'll be circling back in the near future with an update to the zoning amendment for monster homes as well, just to let council know.
Ms. Kimberly, we haven't heard from you all morning. Do you have anything to report?
Yes, good morning, Council. I'd just like to bring you up to date on the Menorah Dam. I had a meeting with the CBC last week regarding where they're at with that project. And the detailed design report came back to them for the dam exceeding costs that they had anticipated by almost 50%. They unfortunately were not successful in 2023 with obtaining any external monies for the program as the design had suggested. And in 2024, they're going to be looking at the design once again to see whether or not there are places where it can be again cut back or other possibilities for funding. So at this point, they will be sending a crew in to take a look at the integrity once again of the culvert that's out there and making any suggestions that could be temporary measures as to the sustainability of that culvert. So just wanting to bring you up to date on that. I will bring back reports as I receive them from them. But I wanted to know where we were on that so I could report that to council.
Could I just ask a question on that? It technically is not a dam they're going to build, I believe. It's going to be reconstructing the berm. I mean,
Correct.
It's not going to be holding back water anymore.
Correct. They will be going, it'll flow right through
Okay.
the creek.
I could add a bit of information because I've talked to CBC about this too, because the Mono Nordic Ski Club's been after me. The design was going to be for 6 meters wide, I think. Mono Nordic wanted it at 9 meters, which just adds an awful lot of money to the design. CBC didn't agree to that, but I've since talked to Mono Nordic and they've said, okay, at least some members of the executive have told me, they can live with 6 meters wide. They wanted it wide enough that they could have 2 skate trails going either way across the berm and a classic ski trail going across the berm. But anyway, that's interesting. It came
Yes.
50% higher.
Yes, and 6 meters is wider than they presently have right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what the detailed design was based on, was 6 meters.
Okay, continue then.
The other thing is to let you know that the CBC also reported to me that there is an invasive species out at Menora surrounding the pond. It's called the hybrid crack willow. They found 11 of these trees surrounding the pond at Menora. And so we talked about it, and they're going to be making arrangements to mitigate the issue starting in May with girdling of the trees. And then girdling of the trees, what that does is it stops any further expanding of the species. And then in late fall, they'll come in and remove the trees in totality. Okay, so there's 11 trees that are affected. Recreation Department, we're, as the weather permits now, hopefully Mother Nature is on our side. We'll be once again back out doing park cleanup. We did quite a park cleanup a couple of weeks ago at Mono Center when we had some nice weather. Had to put it on hold to do some snow shoveling last week. And then this week, again, if the weather stays, we'll be continuing with park cleanup. Starting to get phone calls about getting the new courts opened, and we are working on our pass program to be available on our website. Our target date for that is April 24th, and that's approximately when we're looking at opening the courts as well. So again, that's a target date. And
Just on, did you have the padlock that was vandalized at the Island Lake Park, or what do we call it now? The family park, has it been fixed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And that's it for recreation right now.
Mr. Simpson, do you have anything for us?
I have 3 items this morning, Deputy Mayor Nix. First, I sent council an email last week with respect to the community member on the new OPP detachment board. So unless there's any direction otherwise here this morning, the intent is to put that out to publication forthwith.
Good.
Second item is received an invitation from SHIP this morning inviting all members of council to the ribbon cutting of 236 First Street in Orangeville this Friday. That's between 3 p.m. and 4:30. So that's April 12th. You, Deputy Mayor Nix, are already occupied, I understand that.
I will be going, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Capes will be going, that's excellent.
Okay. And thirdly and finally, I'd like to mention to council that today is the 6th anniversary of Mr. Dahmer working for the town of Mono.
Wow.
That is, for the public, the wizard behind the screen that makes these meetings digital.
Good for
Wow,
you, Andrew.
awesome.
All right, Mr. Dunmore, do you have anything to report?
Quickly, council, I attended the relaunch of the Duffer and Biz Hub. Fred Simpson and I attended and spoke with Diana Morris down there. If you haven't been in lately to see their renovations and the attendees that are utilizing the rental office space and the virtual mailboxes that businesses around Mono and beyond are using, it really looks nice in there, and they're really doing great work. And it's definitely something that they're doing to support our small businesses at an office away from home.
But also they're generating revenue so they can afford to pay our rent, right?
In a great service to the community, absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely. Fred and I participated in the county service delivery review that's ongoing throughout 2024 this year. And we talked about the services and the joint services and the potential for joint services and what services are best at the county level. And so that was continuation to the meetings that county council had where Sonia, or the CAO for Dufferin, put in and Fred and I are just finalizing our community risk assessments comments for the fire for the fire, the community risk fire prevention
Assessment,
plan.
yeah.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Councilors, does anyone have, Councilor Capes, you want me to start with you? Do you have anything to report? I don't have anything to report. Good. Because I'm getting awfully tired. Councilor Davy, do you have anything to report other than, don't tell us about your vacation. Anything else?
No, thank you very much.
Good. Councilor Mantlo, don't tell us about your vacation. Anything to report?
I'm crushing grapes down in Sonora Valley. I just one thing related to the last Board of Health meeting, and it's the change in the in ticks. Ticks are moving into our area. If you look at the tick map, it runs along the shore of Lake Ontario, with extending further north in the area of Ottawa and also up in our area. And as recently, these are the black-legged ticks that carry Lyme disease.
Yeah.
And recently it's entered Deferred County along the eastern margin of it. The incidence of Lyme disease in Ontario is significant. There's something between 3,000 and 4,000 people who get Lyme disease annually. And the Lyme disease, if it persists, it's not treated, it can produce chronic disease, which could be really pretty bad. In Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph area, the incidence of Lyme disease has been about half of what it's been in Ontario up until present, but this looks like it's changing. And it's partly changing with respect to the movement of the change in the climate, I think. Ticks, as you know, are found particularly in long grass. So if you're walking through your hayfield or someplace like that, you want to not only wrap your trouser legs in your socks, but check your legs and check your dogs if you're taking the dogs out for a walk. The ticks are small, you don't feel them, they don't feel them bite, and they just suck blood until they're happy, and that takes usually a couple of days. You really don't know how long they've been on there. And after the tick has been on for a while, there's some exchange of fluid between the tick and you, and in that exchange is the bacteria which produces Lyme disease. So a word to the wise, be careful when you're outside in the bush. Sometimes ticks are on overlying branches as well, but particularly they're on grass, and when you walk through the grass, they come off and attach themselves to your legs.
All right, thank you for
On that true note, I'd say I have nothing else to say.
All right, Councillor Davy?
Thank you very much for that public service announcement, Dr. Mantlo. But we should also say that it is treatable, right? And because they are so ubiquitous now that people who've never seen them before are going to see them on their dogs and are going to see them on their legs. And so, not to be completely alarmist, it's bad, but we also do have treatment for it now.
Well,
Right.
I thank you for bringing that up because it is not only treatable, but it's very easy. You get tetracycline 1 dose and you need it within 3 days of having the tick on yourself. So we no longer test for Lyme disease. They used to send the ticks away. The test results would come back long after it was the time zone for getting adequate treatment. So testing is not done. We don't really have as much evidence of how many ticks are infected. In fact, we don't really know how many ticks are infected. We just know how many people are getting Lyme disease, and the curve just keeps going up.
Then
So,
let me ask,
within 3 days.
could I ask the two doctors on council, if you notice that you've got a tick on your leg, where do you go to get this treatment that works within 3 days? Do you phone your family doctor? Can you go to the pharmacist? How do you go and get this shot or whatever it is?
Well, you can go to your family doctor. That's no difficulty. Or if you can't access your family doctor that day, I go into Emerge. I've had ticks on myself twice, and I've gone into Emerge for
Okay.
and the Emerge doctors are very, very knowledgeable about this. So.
Okay, good to know.
Or the walk-in clinics too, right? Our community has some walk-in clinics that are maybe a better place than Emerge, but yeah, you're looking for a tick that's attached itself to you. You need to do something like that. Or if you're finding that bullet, that target rash around a place where the tick may very well have already come off, but the rash is there.
All right, excellent. I forget where I was. We were doing counselors in terms of anything to report?
Anything to report?
I attended one event with the OPP a few days ago about these anti-lock things for your cars. Other than that, I have nothing to report. So, where am I?
Now you're at notices of motion.
Oh, yeah, notice, are there any notices of motion? Oh, boy, okay, sorry.
And I used to have one of those locks for my steering wheel.
Yes.
But we rescued a giant turtle off the road one day with it to get it off the road, and the thing stunk so bad, I had to throw it out. Like, even though it's metal, like, it was terrible. Anyway, that's a fun story. So I do have
Your microphone's,
notice.
your phone.
Sorry, I do have a notice of motion for Mono to implement a vacant home tax. So I will be bringing that forward.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
I just say, oh, boy, because I have some friends in Toronto, and apparently
Yes,
it's not worth, I mean, it's turning out to be quite a headache.
yes, I know.
Okay. Any other notices of motion? All right, hearing none. Do we have anything in camera, Mr. Simpson?
Nothing on the agenda, Deputy Mayor Nix. Thank you.
Thank goodness. I have a motion that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Mona in Session 7-2024 held on 9 April 2024, that it be signed by the Deputy Mayor and the Clerk, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover? Councillor Capes, Councillor Manklow seconds. Anyone opposed? That motion passes. I have a motion that we adjourn this meeting at 11:55 a.m. Do I have a mover? Councillor Capes, Councillor Manklow seconds. Anyone opposed? This motion is now, this session is now adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Deputy